If it's delusional to think that two close childhood friends of the same gender will eventually get together romantically, who have a number of scenes that, had they been between a boy and a girl who were longtime friends, everyone would be assuming that they would become a couple, then I prefer to be delusional, because same-sex relationships having equal value and respect is the way the world should be. Coming out of season 4, it's established now that Will Byers is gay and loves his best friend Mike Wheeler. But is there a hidden, developing gay love story between the two of them that will come to fruition in season 5? I am Ronald, and I am a lawyer by vocation and part of a very passionate group of people online called Bylers, which Byler is a portmanteau of the last names of Mike and Will. There's a large community online because of what I believe this video will show is the large number of clues within the show itself that these two will get together. And clues there are. And when there's smoke, there's fire. And especially when there's a lot of smoke. And soon after I made the plan for this video, the actor who plays Will Byers, Noah Schnapp, said the following at a fan convention.
I feel like you could tell right from the beginning Mike and Will were like a pair, and it was Lucas and Dustin who were a pair, and Mike was always super protective of Will, and Will always leaned on him. And you could never really tell if it was like something romantic or just like a really special friendship.
So we get confirmation from one of the two actors themselves that viewers are supposed to sense a potential romance between the two. However, if you bring up this possibility on the Stranger Things subreddit, you'll get marginalized and ridiculed. Here is a post someone made recently asking, do you think Will will get any romantic action in season 5? And the responses are disproportionate, and a number of them are quite irrational. We have people saying, I hope not, no. Someone says, as I want Will to die, no, I hope not. Someone gets downvoted for suggesting that there can be more than one gay boy in the town of Hawkins in the 80s. Someone else says, no, there is no time for that, and gets a lot of upvotes, even though we had the Lucas-Max relationship get introduced and realized in the same season, and also Robin and Vicky. Then someone dares to suggest, without speaking Mike's name, that they support Will getting together with Mike, and they write, but I'd be happy if Will just ends up with a classmate from his school. Even the possibility of Will dating another gay person gets downvoted on the subreddit. If it hasn't already been clear, there's a level of homophobia involved, and also a disproportionate reaction based in fear that Will might get together with Mike. There's a Byler fan who has made a number of Byler posts on the subreddit to see them all deleted by the moderators, who, by the way, still allow rude comments responding to some of these posts to stay up. Comments like, you have to stop using the good logic, they don't like it, or calling Byler fans nonsensical, delusional, and sad. There's a Mean Girls-like treatment toward people who ship a Byler there. Needless to say, if you think that a ship is unlikely to come to fruition, people should still be able to ship them. You're free to disagree with them, but you should at least treat people decently. Will pairing with Mike is a taboo topic there, just as Will being gay was a taboo topic 5 years ago. Here, the top voted comment in the thread denied that he was gay. Of course, Will is gay and was confirmed by the cast and crew, and resulted in posts on the subreddit expressing shock and surprise. The amount of hostility towards Byler in the subreddit and in other online spaces that are not Tumblr is unmatched within the Stranger Things fandom. A post about a possible relationship between Nancy and Robin got no such hostility, and the reason is the fact that people who dislike this Robin and Nancy ship don't actually see a real possibility of it happening. In contrast to people who don't like the Byler ship, it's because they see the possibility, otherwise they wouldn't get so worked up about it. Stranger Things last season will probably air in late 2025. Now, I can't say 100% for sure that Mike and Will be endgame, because I can't. However, I make this video specifically to combat the idea that one is delusional for thinking it's a possibility. Because there's quite a lot of evidence the show has planted, so much in fact that I think that if Byler does not become endgame, that this would be a big case of queer baiting, the cynical practice of enticing LGBT+ viewers to tune in to see whether a same-sex romance will happen, but not actually letting it happen in order to not offend conservative viewers, which would be unfortunate because, okay, I'll say more at the end, but it would be a far better writing choice in my opinion because it would further a number of the show's most important themes, and it can quite poetically further some character arcs and also redeem a certain character who the audience has turned against. The end of season 4 left us with a lot of burning questions. Will Max get out of her coma? Will Nancy end up with Jonathan or Steve? Is the government still hunting down Elle? Will our heroes win? Or will they die and fail in defeating the Upside Down? I want to promote the possibility of a Mike-Will romance as the other big question for viewers. Before I continue, let me introduce myself. I am Ronald Off the Record, a lawyer commenting on pop culture, media, and music, especially ones that I love and or obsess about. I hope to bring both analysis and heart to the conversation. I already did one video on Buffy the Vampire Slayer. I plan to do more on that show and on Stranger Things. Like and subscribe. Also, when season 5 of Stranger Things comes out, I plan to post videos of my reactions, where you'll either see me squeal like a schoolgirl about Byler or get gravely disappointed. I also have a much larger channel at the time of this recording called The Rules Lawyer, where I cover tabletop role-playing games like Pathfinder and Dungeons & Dragons. Alright, so I'll be honest, when I watched season 4 of Stranger Things this year in February 2024, I was like most people. I knew that Will was in love with Mike, and I thought that Mike wasn't gay or bi, and didn't like Will that way. Also, in every season of the show, Mike and Elle have been a couple or a possible couple. The last episode ended with what seemed like a breakthrough in their relationship when Mike said that he loved her. The idea that the last season would have Mike doing a 180 and ending up with Will seemed unrealistic and like wishful thinking. It was only a few days later that I learned there's a large online community who supports the ship of Byler. On Tumblr, which is the epicenter of the Byler community, the hashtag grew from 4,000 to 100,000 when season 4 aired, and as of this recording, it's now at 367,000. There's thousands of pieces of art that you can find on the internet. Here's a fan poster for season 5 with Mike and Will holding hands. And there are over 11,000 fanfics on the archive of our own website. There are lots of detailed analyses you can find in print and video form from people who seem to have media literacy, who study writing and television and film. Perhaps most famously, there is a slideshow out there that you can easily find with over 300 slides with evidence of Byler. There's so much out there that once you immerse yourself, given the initial reaction I had when I watched the show, you start to feel a little crazy. What you didn't see before, you cannot unsee now. And you know most other people don't see what you see, and you start to feel like Joyce with the lights. You're sure of what you see, and you know other people think you sound like a crazy person. So you go on places like Tumblr to bond with other people who are like-minded, and Byler fans will know the clip I'm about to play.
If we're both going crazy, then we'll go crazy together, right?
Yeah. Crazy together.
In retrospect, I understand that even as a gay person, I'm affected by heteronormativity and the assumption that everyone is straight unless something is shoved in our faces. When I started reading and watching all of this Byler fan material, I started skeptical. I was aware of the history of queerbaiting in media, but it was the sheer accumulation of things, and specifically this shot that I'll show on the screen, that made me believe that there can't possibly be this many hints, and hints that are so... they can't be there for any other reason but to hint towards Byler, that it's got to lead to something. And now I can say with 100% confidence that Byler has been prepared. Whether it is queerbait or whether it's real, the path has been laid down. And if I were a betting man, and I'm not, though I'm not certain, I would bet that Mike and Will get together in the last season. For people who are already deep in the Byler fandom, I will not be breaking much new ground with the exhibits, as I'll call them, in this video. But I hope to lend my authority and legitimacy as a lawyer, as someone who's trained to look at evidence and look at things from all points of view, to open the eyes of the broader audience, and I'll be making a lot of my own remarks and points too. Also, I will not be exhaustive. First, it's not possible to cover everything in a video of any reasonable length, and I know that this is going to be a very long video already. Second, I also discriminate a bit in what I include. I don't include some of the less conclusive stuff, not because I disbelieve that stuff, but because I think it's not necessary to add that in order to make a strong case. First, I'll actually make the case for Mileven, which is the fandom name for Mike and Elle getting together, before I make the case for Byler. The first and most obvious thing to point out, and one of the more convincing things, is that they have been a romantic couple, or potentially romantic couple, for 4 seasons. Mike does not seem like a very gay boy when he tells Elle that she's pretty and initiates kisses. Well, most kisses. We'll get to that. He seems to like girls, and he's clearly upset when Elle seems to have died at the end of the first season, and he's seeking her out in the second season. In the third season, they're a couple, an on and off couple, and Mike clearly loves 11, blurting out that he loves her. However, he never says that to her face, and season 4 focuses on his struggle to do that. His breakthrough in saying that he loves her, in fact, is part of the climax of the entire season. And so it has to have weight for the future. You don't spend 4 years building something up only to tear it down. Elle, meanwhile, had an awful childhood, if you can even call it that. She knew only the lab. She never had a family, and the first person to care for her genuinely is Mike, who shelters her. In season 4, we come to understand that she looks at herself as a monster, and Mike's reaction at Rink-O-Mania and afterward was devastating to her. When Mike declared his love, he made clear that he loves her no matter what, regardless of whether she has powers. As Will says in the van, both Mike and Elle pushed each other away because they feared losing each other. As for whether Mike is interested in boys possibly, that should have been settled when Mike told Will in season 3, "It's not my fault you don't like girls." Mike knows, at least subconsciously, that Will is gay, and Mike is saying that he is not. I will revisit a lot of these arguments later, by the way. Another positive thing that would come out of a malevolent relationship is that Mike and Elle challenge traditional gender roles. Traditionally, it's the man who has the superpowers in these kinds of stories, who might have a supportive girlfriend on the side. Mike voices his internal struggle of feeling like she is going to leave him because he is some random nerd who isn't as amazing as she is. On Elle's part, she's struggling with the fact that she has power. She is the muscle for the Hawkins crew, but she doesn't feel like a human. As she tells Mike, she does not belong anywhere. But his unconditional love for her, he loves her with her powers and without her powers. This makes clear that he loves her for who she is. She should be loved and deserves love simply for who she is, and this helps her be a superhero. The relationship switches traditional gender roles and has both of them undergoing valid internal struggles. Now for Will, he made a courageous decision, giving up on his romantic hopes for Mike by giving credit to Elle for his own painting. As tragic and shitty as it is, this is a perhaps almost universal experience of young gay people of having a crush or being in love with your best friend. This gives representation to that experience and is an important story to be told to help people go through that experience or process that experience. It's important to move on. And this was why I resisted the Byler call at first, to keep my own expectations in check, because it's shitty to relive those feelings of hope only to end up with disappointment. Having Mike love Will back felt catering and unrealistic, and this represents that journey, and it's a heroic choice he makes. Rip off the Band-Aid indeed. The Duffer Brothers have said that Will really takes center stage again in season 5. This emotional arc for him is what we feel is going to hopefully tie the whole series together. Will is used to being the young one, the introverted one, the one that's being protected. So part of his journey, it's not just sexuality, it's Will coming into his own as a young man. Season 3 made a point that Will was kind of stuck being a child because of the trauma he had experienced. One can say, therefore, that their plan for Will in season 5 is to grow up, come into his own as a young man, leave his childhood fantasies behind, including loving his best friend, and to stand on his own 2 feet. Another big argument for Mileven is that we should be normalizing affection and tenderness among same-sex friends. Mike and Will are perfect friendship goals for dudes. Boys are socialized to not be affectionate or close with each other, especially after a certain age, for fear of being thought of as gay. Mike and Will have a lot of tender moments, especially in the second season, that establish that they have a very close and special friendship that should be normalized, and it doesn't have to be romantic. Now, this is a good point. However, is that actually what we see in the show? And I will argue that it's not. We now move on to the case for Byler, an alternate interpretation. First, I need to address the initial shock and disbelief that many people will have in response to this possibility, and establish some starting premises. First, that there is a often unspoken, just plain homophobic stigma around discussing Byler. It's normal and extremely commonplace to think about and fantasize about heterosexual relationships in popular media. It happens all the time in any show with young people. It's expected, no matter how unhealthy some of those relationships may be. Just as physical attraction to the same sex is not a pathology, neither is fantasizing about or cheering for gay romances in fiction. And it's important, very important for LGBT plus people to have representation. Straight people, you know that you wouldn't be able to relate to and connect with a gay relationship in fiction in exactly the same way. As a gay person, I've done my time cheering for and going through the trials and tribulations and emotional roller coasters of heterosexual romances in popular fiction my entire life. We have a human right to squee and be tormented by on-screen romances that we can relate to as well. The next starting premise is that bisexual people exist, duh, and there's a debate within the Byler fandom over whether Mike is bisexual or gay. But they at least recognize the possibility of Mike being bisexual, while those who dismiss Byler kind of don't think about this as being even possible. And also, of course, it's common for gay people to date someone of the opposite sex. In fact, it's incredibly common due to homophobia. In a lot of online discussions, including the Stranger Things subreddit, I see a lot of funny statements saying that there weren't as many gay people in the 80s. We saw the comments saying there wasn't just one gay boy in Hawkins getting downvoted. Of course, that is ridiculous. There were just as many LGBT people then as there are today. It's just that they were less accepted and more afraid of coming out. An article this year reports that 28% of Gen Z adults report being bisexual, gay or lesbian, or something else. 15% report being bisexual. We're increasingly coming to a point as a society where we should just assume everybody is bisexual unless proven otherwise, like when you play The Sims. When we lift this heteronormative veil, we can then start looking objectively at how Mike treats Will. And let's be real. In season 1, Mike is spending the whole season hunting for Will and is terribly upset that he's gone. In season 2, he's terrified that Will is possessed and is doing everything he can to save him and is doing everything he can to stay at his side. Now, if this were a girl that Mike was so focused on these first 2 seasons, being very attentive and affectionate toward, sleeping by her side in an uncomfortable hospital chair, prioritizing her even while she's possessed and might be a spy for the Mind Flayer, and confessing to her that choosing her as his best friend was the best thing he's ever done, which succeeds at snapping her out of a possession, which prompts her to fight through her possession, to tell Mike and the others to close the gate, which she knows will kill her, which Mike refuses to do while she's possessed in order to save her life. And then this girl continues to provide emotional support to Mike and help repair his relationship with Elle, even though she's in love with Mike herself and is selflessly sacrificing her own feelings for Mike and Elle. Then the entire audience would obviously be saying, these two obviously are destined to be with each other. Mike obviously loves her, and she is a better girlfriend. Everybody would be saying that their romance is being built up over seasons, and nobody would be saying it's forced and unnecessary, which is the common refrain you find in online discussions about Byler. And that's another argument. There's the argument that if Mike were to end up with Will in season 5, then it would come out of nowhere, in contrast to Mike and Elle being built up over 4 seasons. First off, there's the view that season 3 and season 4 chronicle the breaking down of Mike and Elle's relationship. I'll leave that for later. But second, this is, again, heteronormativity in action. We have relationships in this show, including Mike and Elle themselves, that only took a season to develop, that didn't have years of buildup. But part of this heteronormativity is also ignorance of how real the closet is, particularly in the 1980s. This show is set during the peak of the AIDS crisis, when gay people were vilified, ostracized, and blamed for their own deaths. It was very common for queer people to stay in the closet out of fear and hope that you would grow out of it and not deal with hate for being who you are. I was a kid in the 80s myself, who in retrospect was obviously gay, who also in middle school remember reading articles about homophobic articles from doctors and others saying that there are men who grow up to marry women who had same-sex attraction when they were teenagers. I hope that I was going to be one of those people. Meanwhile, for Mike Wheeler, the show makes a point that he grows up in a conservative family that voted for Reagan Bush in 1984. Reagan was the villain of the gay community at the time. Let's just accept the reality that, unlike growing up straight, the road to gay is, well, less straight. So, whether Mike is gay or bi, it's completely plausible that he will explore a relationship with a girl, with Elle. And it only makes sense here. Elle frickin' saves Mike's life when he jumps off the cliff, and he saves her life taking her into his house. It's completely natural for these young people to feel love for each other, and they're not really old enough to understand the difference between platonic love and romantic love at this point. Plus, at least for Mike, who has grown up in society, unlike Elle, who's been in a lab, there is the societal expectation that, of course, you date girls and get married. For Mike and Will, it's very common for slow burn romances in fiction to have miscommunication. In fact, that's how they drag it out. Homophobia and fear compound the usual miscommunication trope in this case. And for Byler's, season 4 is all about miscommunication between these two. Will is thinking that Mike must be straight because, of course, everybody is, and I, Will, don't deserve love and will never find love. And it's extremely scary to come out to a friend, especially to your best friend who you're very close to, whose relationship to you is extremely important, and you don't want to lose that by coming out. And that same fear and feeling might be held by both of them, not just by Will. In season 3, he yells at Will, "It's not my fault you don't like girls." For many people, I think most people, this dismisses the fact that he's gay or bi. But for many LGBT people who know what the closet is like, this is actually evidence that he actually is gay or bi. It looks like he's lashing out and projecting on Will in order to remove the suspicion that he himself is gay or bi. Because it kind of had nothing to do with what Will was arguing with him about. Will was talking about Mike swapping spit with a stupid girl because Mike was ignoring his friends. So Mike yelling, "Well, get with the program, you should like girls too," kind of had nothing to do with what he was talking about. There's a lot of fans who think that Mike became a worse character starting in season 3. He wasn't the same selfless, heroic kid we knew in the previous seasons. And honestly, yeah, when he starts being with Elle, he starts being kind of a dick. He's whispering in Elle's ear when Hopper clearly wants to have a serious conversation with them, when they are all trudging up the hill with Dustin's device to talk to Susie. They're holding each other's hands instead of helping carry the equipment. And in season 4, he seems less perceptive and emotionally distant, and he's kind of a douche to Elle and to Will. Most viewers think that this character change in Mike comes out of nowhere. However, there's a possible hidden arc of Mike dealing with his romantic feelings for Will that makes this make sense. And there's an excellent video essay out there that I encourage people to look at. I'll have a link in the video description, called "The Queer Coding and Internalized Homophobia of Mike Wheeler." It's done by Loser Sits by Herself. It goes over some of the same evidence I go through, but with a focus on why Mike's character seems to change. And it asks, is he the best written character in Stranger Things? Another thing to get out of the way is the fact that Mike said, "I love you" to Elle in the season 4 finale. First, there are other kinds of love besides romantic love. There's platonic love, love between friends. But also, there are romantic relationships like Joyce and Hopper, Lucas and Max, Jonathan and Nancy, where it's undeniable that they love each other, but they actually never say I love you to each other in the show. This is because it's shown in all of their actions and interactions with each other and how they've fought for each other and clearly need each other. What's remarkable is that Mike and Elle are the one relationship in the show where it becomes necessary to reaffirm that they love each other by saying words. And I'll let that stew for a while. Now, without further ado, we get to the evidence. And I'm sure by this point you are all impatient with me. I am thorough to a fault and I apologize. I give each of them, in true lawyer fashion, an exhibit letter, and I will submit that every individual one on its own may not convince you, but be patient and consider all of them in their totality. They all exist in the show. The first thing I'll say, I will not give an exhibit number 2. First, because it's obvious, and second, because it could be read platonically. However, it's necessary to say it because it's so core to who they are. The show establishes from the very first scenes that Mike and Will have a very special bond. When Will goes missing, Mike is leading the party to find Will. Mike is the one who convinces them, and his determination drives the group forward. When they believe Will is dead, we see Mike's reaction and how devastated he is when he bikes home and hugs his mom. Joyce and Mike are the two people determined to believe that Will is alive. The point's made that a parent will recognize their own child's breathing. And later, it's only Mike of the original core group of friends who recognizes Will's breathing. Mike insists on this even though he has just seen Will's dead body. Joyce had the benefit of seeing that the fake body didn't have Will's birthmark. Mike had no evidence and insisted and refused to accept that Will was dead. In season 2, when Will leaves to see the doctors, it's Mike who notices that Will's quiet today, unlike his friends. Will only confides his secrets to Mike and vice versa. Throughout the second season, Mike is constantly attentive to and trying to help Will. He notices when Will wanders off. He takes Will home on Halloween. He attacks Dart when it looks like it will attack Will. He goes to Will's place to make sure he's okay. He sleeps on the floor in his bedroom. He sleeps in the hospital room in an uncomfortable chair. Will, even though he's possessed by the Mind Flayer, still recognizes his mother and Mike only. Mike vividly remembers when they were 5 years old and asking him to be his friend and says that's the best thing he's ever done, and gets Will to start tapping Morse code with the same hand, by the way, that Mike held when they were in his bedroom. In season 3, Mike and Will are virtually on a double date with Lucas and Max. Now, some would say that they're just very close best friends and that we should normalize platonic male friendships that involve tenderness and devotion like these two do. To which I would say, let's also normalize LGBT people. And there shouldn't be this sharp divide between being straight and being gay. If Will were a girl, wouldn't everyone think that they have a deep bond and romantic chemistry? Still, this is not conclusive. It's not really evidence that they go beyond being friends to being romantic. And that's why I don't give it an exhibit letter, unlike the next things. But I will say for now that if this is simply a platonic friendship, I will say there's a contrast in how these two relate to each other starting in season 3, and that there needs to be an explanation for that. And now we've gotten information from Will's actor that their relationship at this stage is ambiguous and can be read as romantic.
And you could never really tell if it was like something romantic or just like a really special friendship.
All right, now on to the actual exhibits. Exhibit A, the snowball. In season 2, we just had a whole season in which Mike is super focused on saving Will. Again, Elle returns, and he now gets to have the date with Elle that he wanted to have at the end of the first season. At the snowball, Mike and Will are side by side, of course, as they are always inseparable in this show. And a girl comes up to Will and asks him to dance. He's hesitant, he's stuttering, and in retrospect, we all now know why. Mike encourages him to dance, and they dance. Now, it has since been revealed that in the original script, they planned to have a shot of Will dancing awkwardly with the cute girl and pining for Mike, who's dancing with Elle. So they clearly had plans this early in the show for Will to be gay and to have romantic feelings towards Mike. Of course, we don't see this on screen in the final cut. We don't see Will pining for Mike. But we do see something if you look closely and look at Mike in these shots that I'm about to play.
I mean, yeah, sure.
Mike seems terribly sad watching Will dancing with the girl. There's a clear parallel, too. Dustin is looking sadly at Max choosing to dance with Lucas. And what is Mike doing? Looking sadly, watching Will dance with the girl. And then we see him sitting alone, looking sad again by himself. Why so glum? He knows his date is going to show up eventually. Now, this is a subtle thing that's easy to miss because he did encourage Will to dance with the girl, and he's there to see Elle. But again, I posit, if Will were a girl here, and these same scenes played out with him sadly looking at a girl dancing, we know what the majority of the general audience would be thinking at this point. All right, on to Exhibit B. Mike's reactions to Elle and Will being upset in Season 3. Early in the season, he's kind of mistreating both Elle and Will. He lies to Elle, saying that he is with his grandma when he's actually going to the mall. And when Elle catches him, he doesn't explain himself, and Elle dumps his ass. To Will, Mike doesn't want to play D&D, and in fact mocks Will for trying to run a game, and he says there's something wrong with him for not liking girls. Now, in the same episode, Max tells Elle what she should expect from a boyfriend.
He'll come crawling back to you in no time, begging for forgiveness. I guarantee you, him and Lucas are like totally wallowing in self-pity and misery. We're like, oh, I hope they take us back.
But Elle is not the person Mike acts that way towards. When Elle spies on Mike, he doesn't see himself doing anything wrong and agrees with Lucas that girls are emotional and a different species. Who does Mike crawl back to? Immediately after Mike says his homophobic thing to Will, he looks immediately like he regrets it. And when Will bikes away, Mike bikes after him in a really, really bad rainstorm. And it's established in this show that Will is like way outside of Hawkins from the first episode. He bikes across town and also drags Lucas with him to try to find Will.
Will! Will, I'm sorry, man, all right? I was being a total asshole. Please, can you just come outside and we'll talk?
And when Will's not home, he looks for him in the woods at Castle Byers. Mike's very different reactions to these two play out in the same episode. This isn't the only time we see this contrast. In Season 4, when Mike says something at the dinner table that upsets Elle, clearly, and she leaves the room, he doesn't follow her. But when Will is upset that they don't like his D&D game, Mike does follow. With these two quote-unquote breakups that we see here in this episode, the audience is made to feel very differently towards them as well. Elle dumping Mike is played as a comedic moment. It doesn't have much weight for either party. In fact, Elle is elated and happy and giving a high five to Max afterward. The show kind of celebrates Elle being on her own. In contrast, Mike and Will's fight is intense. These are two people who have deep feelings for each other. They're losing something very important to both of them. And when Will goes to Castle Byers, he's utterly destroyed, hating himself and mourning what he's lost, his childhood, and losing Mike. All right, Exhibit C. The Season 3 ending montage. All right, so this is the sequence where Hopper's letter is read out in a voiceover as Elle's reading it, his heart-to-heart speech to Elle. And it looks like Mike is sad about both Will and Elle leaving, which he obviously is. But when you listen and watch closely, it's hinted that he's kind of thinking more about Will. There's a number of shots focusing on Mike during the voiceover. We hear about leaving childhood things behind, including...
I miss playing board games every night.
We have a focus shot on Mike looking at Will's house. And then he comes home to his mom, and in a specific callback to when he thought Will was dead in season 1. And the voiceover talks about fear of changing, and we zoom into Mike's face.
And I guess, if I'm being really honest, that's what scares me. I don't want things to change. And so I think maybe that's why I came in here, to try to maybe stop that change. To turn back the clock. To make things go back to how they were.
Now, what had just happened a few minutes earlier? Well, we see Will donating his Dungeons & Dragons set, and they seem to have made up by this point. It is some time later. And Mike still wants to play D&D. He really didn't mean what he said earlier. He asks Will, what if you find another party? And he says, not possible. And there is a lingering smile from Mike. Will only play with Mike, basically. We then immediately after have this scene where Eleven's trying to get Will's bear out of the closet. They have some awkward conversation about staying in touch, and Elle brings up the fact that she had heard Mike, say that he loves her when talking to the group earlier in the season. And he doesn't seem to remember, or is pretending not to remember. And she tells him, she loves him too, and kisses him. And I'll play it on the screen. This is a, shall we say, a one-sided kiss. His eyes are open. He doesn't seem to be reciprocating.
Mike. I love you too.
And Mike looks visibly confused and conflicted, thinking about something immediately afterward. Now, I'll say that this is kind of a strange reaction. In season 3, he had been wanting to repair things with Elle, and Elle was the person who was keeping him at a distance and not making up yet. Now that she's saying she loves him back and kisses him, one would think he'd be elated at this point. But this is the resolution? And fans have pointed out that he's literally standing in front of a closet, which of course might symbolize the gay closet. What's this expression afterward? Is he sad that she's leaving? But if it's that, then why no clear indication that he is happy that she has expressed her love and kissed him? The prevailing theory among Bylers is that this was a key gay realization moment. There's a contrast between how he felt with Will immediately before and how he's feeling with Elle now. And he's not really feeling the kiss. So what is going on in Mike's head at this point? What's he thinking to himself? And then why is he later go home to hug his mom in an exact parallel to losing Will, or thinking he lost Will, in season 1?
To turn back the clock. To make things go back to how they were.
What is the change that is in Hopper's voiceover that Mike might be thinking about? Is it possible that he's not only mourning Will and Elle leaving, but a change in himself? Is he missing being younger and being able to innocently play with and be affectionate with Will without fear that his feelings were romantic and gay? Is he afraid and not knowing what to do with these feelings? Now, this has all been relatively subtle stuff compared to what we'll see in season 4, when the Byler community exploded, and it's the season when Will became canonically gay and in love with Mike. And it's also the season where many Bylers see Mike being a gay disaster. Exhibit D, the airport reunion. They've been friends for 10 years, best friends, and choosing Will to be his friend was the best thing Mike has ever done. They've been separated for the first time. And what happens when they reunite?
Oh, hey, how you doing?
get a fucking half hug. What was that, Mike? He also seems to be ignoring Will, putting his arm around Elle, being super clingy, and not looking at Will, or at least pretending not to look at Will. It's not like Mike doesn't hug his guy friends. When Will moved away, they had a big hug, tearful hug, and in the episode prior to this, he hugs Dustin at the D&D game. So what's going on? There are 3 possibilities. Possibility A, is it because Mike knows that Will is gay and likes Mike romantically and Mike doesn't want to lead him on? First, it's never clearly established that Mike knows Will is gay. He could have said the thing during the rain fight because he was pointing out that Will just wasn't interested in girls yet. But second, Mike's actions, when you look at all of them this season, they don't add up to that. If Mike didn't want to lead him on here, then what was this?
I think we should work together. I think it'll be easier if we're a team. Friends. Best friends.
Conversely, if that scene, the bedroom scene, I'll call it, was only platonic and he just wanted to be best friends in the guy sense, then what was this scene about?
Hey, how you doing?
Why couldn't he just naturally hug his best friend at the airport? They don't make sense together. And so the I won't lead him on by not showing affection theory doesn't add up. Possibility B is that these 2 best friends have grown distant, being months apart. We also learned that they have not done much to reach out to each other. But I don't know, man. Will is there with his arms outstretched trying to hug you. He's your best friend. Your best friend of 10 years. And they were on good terms when Will moved away. And distance makes the heart grow fonder, normally. And then there's a third possibility, which I think is true, which is that he's pretending to not be close to Will because he actually does feel close to Will and that he feels closer than he should. Historically, we know he's never had issues showing physical intimacy with Will and touching him. And for that to suddenly end, there has to be a reason. This seems to be internalized homophobia at play. Guys don't hug their guy friends. Gay guys do that. But remember, he's okay hugging Dustin. This is only a problem he has specifically with Will. We also have the fact that Elle is in this scene also. And there's a pattern where when Elle's around, or when he's in a relationship with Elle, he ignores Will, or at least tries to ignore him, and stops being a friend to Will. And that continues at Rink-O-Mania, which makes you ask, why should he have this issue? The most straightforward answer is that he feels conflicted between the 2 because he also has romantic feelings for Will. And let's step back for a second and also look at his outfit in this scene. He's not being himself. He's putting on some kind of, I'll call it his straight sauna. These are not colors he normally wears, and in behind-the-scenes interviews, the costume designers say exactly that.
And it was written that our guy would go, oh, hey, cool shirt. So it's kind of hokey, you know, it says surf on the back and there's surfboards and it's bright. It's not a color that Mike normally wears. We had made 2 colorways. We made orange and teal, and he's worn teal before, so it felt like orange was the best color that was different from his closet, that felt like he was trying to make it work in California.
Mike's actor, Finn Wolfhard, also says in an interview that this season he's trying to be as normal as possible.
I think Mike's just trying to be as normal as possible and try to keep on a normal path.
And to drive the point home, Argyle, who hasn't met Mike before, says,
No, it's a shitty knockoff. Yeah.
I get even more literal in a post on Tumblr where I point out that the colors that he wears, yellow and purple, are Elle's favorite colors.
I handpicked those for you in Hawkins. I know you like yellow, but now I'm kind of realizing that it's too much yellow. I know you also like purple, so I got some purple as well, so I kind of did like a 70-30 split kind of thing.
He's literally wearing a costume that is Elle. Mike putting forward a fake version of himself, of course, parallels Elle putting forward a fake version of herself about being happy in California. The show is establishing that they're both lying to each other and that they feel like they have to lie to each other to make their relationship work. Mike's lie is just more subtle. But I know Bylers are jumping up and down that I haven't mentioned the next thing yet. This is the kicker for the airport scene. And it's very easy to miss because we're made to focus, at least upon first viewing in this scene, on Will being unhappy that Mike doesn't hug him, Elle, for some reason, not being happy looking at the bouquet and the letter attached to it. So it's easy to miss this next thing. At the very beginning of the season, we learned that Will is acting weird working on a painting for a girl he likes.
Will is painting a lot, but he won't show me what he's working on. Maybe it is for a girl. I think there is someone he likes, because he has been acting weird.
Shrewd viewers at this point now realize that the painting was for Mike, and that the girl, quote unquote, that Will likes is Mike, and that Will is in love with Mike or has a crush on him. But Elle mentioned this painting and said that he must like a girl in a letter to Mike that Mike reads at the start of the season. Mike hasn't heard from Will in months, and now he hears that Will likes girls. And remember, the 80s, heteronormativity, stronger than it is now. Of course, a guy's gonna like girls. How do straight platonic guy friends treat each other usually when they hear that one of them is into a girl? Let's imagine Dustin and Lucas in this situation. After actually hugging Will, they would have been excited to learn about this new girl Will was interested in and asked if the painting was for her. Just as Mike was excited to learn about Dustin's girlfriend Susie at the start of season 3. And come on, we all know they'll find out if she's hot or whatever and cheer him on, encourage him. Instead, we see Mike being very nervous. After the non-hug, Mike is visibly uncomfortable and tense and asks Will, "What's that?" It's the first thing Mike talks about. He hasn't even met Argyle yet. It's the first thing he talks about. And that's because Mike is terrified to hear that it's for a girl. And maybe he's hoping that it was for him. And what Will says confirms that, yeah, it is for a girl. And how dare Will not tell Mike about this? And Mike's reaction looks like a aggressive non-caring, shall we say. Now I'll replay the scene and ask you to rewatch it with this theory in mind.
Perfect, thank you.
Oh, hey, how you doing?
Hey, Mike.
Hey, how you doing?
Yeah, good, man.
Great. What's that?
It's nothing. It's just this painting I've been working on.
Cool.
Now, doesn't that make the most sense? And we'll see later how Mike reacts when he finds out that Will's secret painting is for him. So Mike not hugging is how a jealous person acts. He's pretending to be aloof and to not care for Will, because that's how you treat someone who cares for you back. Mike is short-circuiting. Of course you should hug your best friend. And this also explains why Mike is so aggressively coupley with Elle and seeming to ignore Will, because why not make Will jealous back? Notice that I said he seems to ignore Will. Exhibit E, the Rink-O-Mania argument. Elle has been horribly bullied in front of everybody, and her lie to Mike that she's been in California has just been exposed as a lie. And we see that Mike becomes angry with Will. We see that him not caring about Will has been a facade all along. Although he seems like he's been ignoring Will, he's been paying quite close attention to Will.
Which is why you decided to be a douche to her all day?
I wasn't being a douche.
You were. You were rolling your eyes. You were moping. You were barely talking. You basically sabotaged the whole day.
Well, she was lying to you, Mike.
Mike goes so far as to say that Will ruined the whole day. Not the bullies who bullied Elle. Not Elle lying to Mike. But Will being unhappy ruined Mike's day. Like, what the fuck? And even though Elle was really the one lying to Mike, how dare Will not tell Mike something? How dare Will keep a secret from him? Mike was so focused on Will that he didn't notice Elle's obvious discomfort when Angela approached them at the table. Mike was too focused on Will to recognize these as the bullies that he should recognize. He's been bullied himself. And then there's this interesting exchange where Will wants to figure out where the two of them are at in their relationship and points out that Mike has only called a couple of times while sending a lot of letters to Elle. Will asks, "What about us?" Because they used to be best friends, we learn in a second. However, Mike's immediate reaction was,
"That's because she's my girlfriend, Will."
And us?
We're friends. We're friends.
As in, we're not boyfriends. Will was acting like staying in touch with your best friend was normal. It was Mike who panicked. In Mike's head, trying to contact Will would have meant they would have been boyfriends. Some people point out that him saying we're friends is further proof that he's straight and doesn't see Will that way. But come on, it's very common for slow burn romantic relationships for the couple to deny that they have any romantic chemistry, that they're just friends.
What's going on here? Lovers quarrel?
No, I mean, we're just friends.
Friends.
Do me a favor and move your lovers quarrel elsewhere, okay? This, not a lovers quarrel, pal.
We also learn in a throwaway line later in the season that Mike actually has been trying to stay in contact with Will by phone over the past year. When Elle gets her powers back and listens in on the gang in Hawkins, when Max hears a busy signal trying to call the Byers' house, Dustin says,
Same shit.
How's that possible? I told you, Joyce has this telemarketer job. She's always on the phone. Mike won't stop whining about it.
So Mike has been trying to call repeatedly, and he wouldn't be calling Elle, who's hiding from the government. And they establish at the end of season 3 that they would be communicating only using Dustin's Cerebro.
You packed your walkie, right?
Yes.
Because you know that I'm gonna steal Cerebro from Dustin and call you so much you're gonna have to turn it off, right?
The government would be bugging Hawkins' phones and wouldn't necessarily know where Elle moved to. It's why they wrote letters. Now, I am like 90% there with this theory, is because it would have been so natural for Mike to say, I tried to call you. Now, this could be a plot hole, or it might not be. It might be consistent with Mike's decision to maintain a facade of not caring that much for Will because it would mean he loves Will. Exhibit F, heteronormativity and audience expectations and ignorance of the gay closet. Now, I'm clearly cheating a little. This isn't an exhibit per se. It's more of an explanation as to why there have not been explicit clues that Mike is gay or bi and is interested in Will. It made less sense for me to say what I'm about to say earlier. Mileven shippers and people on the subreddit ridicule Byler's, saying that Mike is outwardly only interested romantically in Elle. They call Byler's delusional, sometimes with homophobic undertones. Remember that being in the closet includes hoping you'll grow out of it and dating someone of the opposite sex. You do it not only out of fear of homophobia, but because you don't see any gay romantic opportunities, even if they're right in front of you, because they have to be straight also. Everyone's straight. This was completely common, and this might be how Mike feels towards Will too. Again, it's terrifying to make a romantic advance to your friend, and especially your best friend. You don't want to lose that friendship. Now, some people might say Mike knew that Will likes girls. That's why he yelled at Will about not liking girls in the rain fight in season 3. But I find that hard to accept because that would mean that Mike is homophobic and also able to be homophobic to his best friend and hurt him. And that is not the Mike we know. We know that Mike stood up to Troy, the bully, in season 1 for saying homophobic things and attacking Will. So either Mike remained ignorant that Will is gay, or he knew Will was gay and the writers drastically worsened his character and made him homophobic, which I don't think that's what it is, and it would suck if that's what it is. So Mike naturally thinks that the painting that Elle told him Will was making for a girl is for a girl. This feeds into Mike's belief that Will is straight. So what is Mike's reaction when Will's secret painting for a person he likes is actually for Mike? We see how he reacts. He's overjoyed. He has not yet heard Will claim that it was commissioned by Elle. And when Will says that Elle commissioned it, there's actually a look of, briefly, of disappointment in Mike's face.
Told me what to draw. Even Elle, especially Elle. These past few months, she's been...
And then confusion for the rest of the conversation. He's simultaneously overwhelmed with emotion that Will made this very special painting for him, but at the same time, Will is pushing Mike to be with Elle. It's all kind of overwhelming and confusing. Now, the jury's out among Bylers about whether Mike understood the actual truth, that Will was lying about the origin of the painting, that it was Will's love painting to Mike. I'll just say for now that I'll play a clip later in the video of Finn Wolfhard saying that Mike was clueless in this scene. On the other hand, there is a valid argument that Mike did understand the origin of the painting, because he's usually a very sharp guy. In previous seasons and in this season, he's usually the one who puts 2 and 2 together. However, I don't know. I am personally in the camp that he believes what Will says because Will, as far as Mike knows, has never lied to him. And just as Will thinks he's never going to fall in love because gay love doesn't happen, gay people don't exist, Mike denies himself hope also that Will might love him, and is more than prepared to accept the surface of what Will's saying, seeming to want Mike to be with Elle. All of that is cast aside in the climax of the season when Elle seems to be dying and Will pushes him across the precipice to make a love confession to Elle. And there's an instant where Mike actually looks quite devastated to hear Will saying that.
Mike, don't stop. Okay, you're the heart. Okay, remember that. You're the heart.
So what this Exhibit F is about is really how heteronormativity and the closet is shaping how these two are miscommunicating throughout the season. And heteronormativity also affects how we as the audience engage with all of this. Audiences usually require more to be shown to show that an LGBT coupling is a possibility than a straight coupling. But there's something else, which is that the showrunners have to hide the clues. The normal way that romantic couplings are hinted at in TV and movies is by having some cliche moments like an almost kiss. And we have several examples of that in this show. We also don't have moments from Mike's point of view where Mike is longing for a guy or longing for Will. The lack of these things for Mike and Will is relied on to say with certainty, oh, Mike's straight. But I would posit, what would the media's reaction be if there was an almost kiss moment between Mike and Will in season 4 in 2022? What would the media's reaction be if there was just one moment where Mike, we see from his point of view that he's longingly looking at Will sexually, at least more openly than he already does, and we'll get to that. There would have been media hoopla then, years before the final season, about the gay romance, Stranger Things turning gay. And we just saw this hoopla this year with 911, one of their main characters being revealed to be bisexual. And to be honest, if that clue were explicitly planted, then how the quote-unquote love triangle between Mike and Elle and Will, how that would eventually be resolved would kind of be obvious. You want suspense with the love triangle setup going into the end of the season, just as season 1 kept in the air that Nancy might like Jonathan when she gave the camera to Jonathan and then celebrated Christmas with Steve. Same thing with Nancy, despite being in a relationship with Jonathan, her and Steve having romantic chemistry in season 4. A single moment would make clear that actually this is going to end with Mike and Will getting together. If Byler is the plan, having an explicit clue in season 4 would have completely killed all of the suspense. All right, the next exhibit. Mike throws away Elle's last letter. For all Mike knew, it was Elle's last letter to him. She is in the hands of the government for an indeterminate amount of time, possibly months, to train for a dangerous mission, confronting a danger in the Upside Down. They make clear to him that he cannot contact her for this whole period of time. And his response to her last letter is to throw it away? They even give it its own shot.
Yeah, you're right.
All right, some would say they focus on that in order to give the bad part of the government the clue that they need to track Elle. But that wasn't actually really necessary. They still had their hostage that they could take and interrogate. How Mike treats Elle's letter is in contrast to how Mike treats Will's drawings that he makes. In season 1, when Mike thinks Will is dead, he's caressing these drawings, and he has a whole booklet of them. He pins Will's drawings on his wall, as we see in this shot. Now, I don't mean to imply that he disrespects Elle or gives zero value to their relationship. But he didn't have to do that. And at this moment in the story, he doesn't know he'll ever see Elle again. All right, next exhibit. Exhibit H, the second heart-to-heart scene between Mike and Will. And yes, there was more than one in this season. In fact, I think there were 5. In fact, all of their conversations this season are very, shall we say, intimate. Just before the bad part of the government bust into Will's home, Mike and Will talk. And at this point in the story, it's important to know what Mike is thinking. Because Elle, she's gone for an unknown amount of time, and her letter to Mike was signed from Elle. It essentially signaled that their relationship was off. And the two of them are scheming with Jonathan to escape their house arrest, to go to Hawkins to help the Hawkins crew, not to get Elle. So it's almost as if with Elle gone and Mike's relationship with her now unofficially over, that we see a kinder, gentler Mike suddenly. He's no longer defensive or mean or lashing out. He can recognize his own faults and be emotionally vulnerable and kind of sweet with Will.
Yeah, I mean, I never really unpacked. Thanks, by the way.
For what?
Unlike the conversation Mike just had with Elle, where there's a gulf between each other, Mike says he's been bullied, he understands, and Elle insists no, Mike doesn't. Elle wants Mike to say he loves her, and he pretends that he actually does.
Who said that I didn't?
You never say it.
I say it.
And then we have this exchange.
Thanks, by the way.
For what?
For knocking some sense into me. I mean, I was being a total self-pitying idiot.
I didn't say it.
You didn't have to.
They are both being flirty with each other. It is kind of undeniable here. If you don't see it, then you don't see. I don't accept that. And it's a telling, I would say, deliberate contrast, this exchange, to Mike's conversation with Elle just the day before. The way the scenes are set up as well, conversations in the person's bedroom, forces us to compare Mike's relationship with Elle to his relationship with Will. Mike and Elle say a lot of words and fail to communicate, while Mike and Will can communicate without words. In fact, there's a lot of wordless communication that goes on between these two through the seasons, and especially in this season. They kind of just understand each other and know what the other's thinking, like a long-time romantic couple. All right, back to the scene. Mike still thinks that Will's painting is for a girl and that Will is straight, which explains his nervousness. We see 2 very different Mikes in relation to Will this season. There's the pretending not to care Mike that we saw at the airport, and the tender but nervous that he cares too much Mike that we see here in Will's bedroom.
I have no idea what's going to happen next. But whatever it is, I think we should work together. I think it'll be easier if we're a team. Friends. Best friends.
Cool.
Cool.
If Mike thought of Will as his platonic guy friend, he wouldn't be this nervous. He felt like he had to make a fucking case to be Will's best friend, which of course he didn't need to. Mike was afraid of rejection because he has feelings that go beyond even best friends. They did not reach each other that year because they both were terrified of asking for too much, that whatever they felt was unrequited. Now, if Mike just saw Will as a platonic guy friend, it would have gone more like this. You would just say that you're still best friends and not to fuck up next time and stay in touch. Now, I said that when I first watched this season, I didn't catch on to Byler. And I do remember, however, looking at this scene and thinking, what is this? What is going on here? This is erasing Will's hope. And when I said earlier that we have not seen any cliche moments like an almost kiss or an almost love confession between Mike and Will, what TV Tropes calls a moment killer, to establish that they're a potential romantic couple, I will revisit that here and ask you, okay, if the pizza van had not arrived at that moment, what would have happened in the scene? Remember, they're heading to Hawkins not to rescue Elle, and Mike said that they're going to be a team to face evil together. Well, Will at this point would have shown Mike his painting, and he would have gone with his original plan to say it was from himself. And that painting, by the way, was a veiled love confession that Will did plan. It had a heart on Mike's shield, like hello. It was a subtle way to indicate romantic interest to Mike that Mike could have interpreted any way he wanted, and it would have given Mike an opportunity to make his own choice, while also smartly avoiding any big dramatic confrontation that might force Mike to reject Will as a friend. And Mike, who loves Will's drawings, would have been moved, and it would have been hella gay. So yes, this was the classic interruption trope between a romantic couple, but it was presented in a way that most people didn't catch. All right, next exhibit. Exhibit I, Mike can't say he loves Elle. And the reason might be because he has romantic feelings for Will that he feels and realizes. His strange attitude at the airport suggests that he is fully aware of these feelings. And yes, he does say he loves her at the end of the season, but it's only at the end of the season. Let's look at everything leading up to it. Mike doesn't write love in his letters or on the card with his bouquet. In Mike and Will's first heart-to-heart scene, Mike says that his fight with Elle was...
It was a fight that you can't come back from.
And why can't you come back from it, Mike? She was pointing out that you're not saying that you love her. She was saying precisely how you can come back from this problem and solve it. Wasn't the clear thing to do was to see her pain, say you love her, and to hold her? Instead, he denies that he doesn't say he loves her and gaslights her.
I say it.
Okay, 11, you're being ridiculous.
Mike can't even say he loves her to Will. He calls it the thing.
And if I would have said that thing, then maybe she'd want me there with her.
This is supposed to be Mike's best friend, the person he's closest to. And if it were a platonic friendship, he kind of would have no issue saying that, would he? Then when they're in the desert, they kind of have the same conversation again. Mike says,
I should have explained myself, because then maybe 11 would have taken me with her and things would be different, but I didn't know what to say.
Now, a lot of people, not just Mileven shippers, explain Mike's behavior by saying that he comes from a loveless family. His parents don't express their love to each other. Ted Wheeler is clearly an emotionally distant father who just brings home the bacon. However, I would say that I don't think it's true that he comes from a loveless family because his mom, Karen, makes quite clear that she's emotionally available for her children. Whenever she and Mike interact, it's clear that they're quite close. And even an older Mike at the end of season 3 comes to her in his vulnerability and wants a hug. So I don't accept that he's from a loveless family. And it also, even if it were true, it's not a real explanation for why he can't say he loves Elle. If someone you love is in pain in front of you saying they don't feel love, then of course you say it. And this parallels an earlier moment in this same show when Steve kind of demanded to know from Nancy whether she loves him during season 2. And she couldn't say it.
Well, then tell me.
Tell you what?
You love me.
Really?
Harrington! Dude, we need you, man. That douchebag's killing us. Let's go!
All right.
Come on!
And we know how that turned out. And Nancy came from the same quote-unquote loveless family, the Wheeler family, as Mike. So coming from a loveless family is not an excuse. And it's even worse in this case where Mike just saw Elle get horribly bullied the day before, and Mike has offered no comfort, no support, no hug, no anything to help her get through this. The only actual interaction we see is Mike's passive-aggressive comment at the dinner table.
She looked like she's gonna be fine.
She's totally fine.
She didn't look fine.
Elle.
All right, back to the desert scene. Will says it's scary to open up to people you really care about, because what if they don't like the truth? Now, we know coming from Will that this has a double meaning. One, he's encouraging Mike to open up and acknowledging that it can be scary to be more vulnerable in a relationship and have a deeper relationship. You don't want them to reject your kind of, let's call it an emotional advance. Now, Will doesn't know what we, the audience, know, which is that Mike saying he loves Elle was exactly what Elle was pleading him to do. For all Will knows, Mike is just afraid to confess his love. The other meaning of Will's words, obviously, is they apply to himself. He relates to this feeling of being afraid to open up because what if they reject you? What if your straight friend rejects your advance? Okay, but we're not talking about Will's feelings here right now. We're talking about Mike's. So what is Mike's reaction to Will saying it's scary to open up and say how you really feel?
I think it's just scary to open up like that. To say how you really feel. Especially to people you care about the most. Because what if they don't like the truth?
Mike nods. Mike and we, the audience, know that him saying he loves Elle was exactly what Elle was pleading for. So why does Mike nod when Will says she might not like the truth? Is it because Mike does not love Elle? And if it's not that, what else could it be? Also, in the first bedroom scene between these two, Will assures Mike, "You're going to see her again, and whatever you didn't say, you can say it to her then, okay?" And Mike's face, when Will turns away, looks visibly anxious.
You're gonna see her again, and whatever it is, whatever you didn't say, you can say it to her then. Okay? Yeah. Yeah. She's gonna be okay.
Either he is afraid of telling the truth that he doesn't love her, or he's dreading the idea of saying he loves her, saying something he doesn't truly feel. Also, these are two best friends who don't lie to each other. It's a maxim of the show that friends don't lie. Mike can't make himself say something he doesn't truly feel in front of Will. And if he loves Will instead of Elle, he especially cannot say it. What he is prepared to be honest about is his worry and anxiety about where his relationship with Elle is headed. And there's a hilarious theory that I kind of subscribe to that these two are at cross purposes in every single one of their conversations. Mike is actually deep down ready to end his relationship with Elle, but is not prepared to admit to himself that he doesn't love her the way she wants him to. And he's hoping for a push from his best friend to come to that realization. And so he's sharing things that show that it's actually not going well for them, and not going well for Mike in particular, that he feels insecure next to Elle. He feels like a discount Lois Lane. On the other hand, Will is sabotaging himself and trying to make this relationship between Mike and Elle work, and doing the opposite of what Mike is actually kind of asking Will to do. All right, back to the main point. Bottom line is, if Mike is straight and romantically interested in Elle and loves Elle, and only views Will platonically, then Mike should have no issue saying he loves Elle to Will when the stakes are lower. Exhibit J, Mike and Elle have a platonic reunion. When Mike arrives at the secret lab and sees Elle take down a helicopter that's trying to kill her, they reunite and there's no kiss. And I'm sorry, I know I said they have unofficially broken up, but it's not like Elle said, "I dump your ass." And if you're Mike, you were just separated from your girlfriend without being able to say goodbye. You didn't know how long she'd be gone. You knew that a part of the government wanted her dead. You travel across the country and you crack a secret code to find her, and you see her standing alone against an armed army helicopter. And if you're Elle, you just got arrested by the police, you then get taken by part of the government, and you find that your abusive supposed father, Dr. Brenner, is still alive and are once again subjected to his experiments. And after you had a falling out with Mike, where he didn't say he loves you, you see that he has traveled across the country to find you, to rescue you. Given all of this, don't you think that these two would have kissed? Wasn't this the moment for the whole "does he really love me" arc to be resolved? But no, instead, the reunion is more like that of dear friends. And we also see an interesting reaction after hugging Elle and turning to see Will.
Everyone's here.
Shouldn't Mike be elated that this brother and sister are being reunited? But no, instead he looks conflicted. It's like he has guilt because of having feelings for both. All right, the next exhibit. Exhibit K, Will's role in convincing Mike to say that he loves Elle. While they travel across the country to find Elle, Mike rambles in the van, and we see why he feels insecure and is not being himself when he arrives at the airport. He feels deeply insecure in this relationship he has with Elle. He's some random nerd who just happened to find Elle by dumb luck. It wasn't fate, and she's Superman while he's not even a Lois Lane. She was a top reporter, and he's just a random nerd. Now, an interesting choice of words to call Elle Superman, by the way. We saw in Hawkins that he's not trying to be cool. He's playing D&D with the freak of the school, Eddie. Just as Elle's trying to impress Mike, Mike is trying to impress Elle and present a false version of himself because he doesn't think the real him is enough.
No, it's a shitty knockoff. Yeah.
When he arrives at the airport, Elle has ideas for things they can do together, like have burritos for breakfast or go roller skating, both of which are ideas that Mike is not exactly enthusiastic about.
Burritos for breakfast?
Yes, trust me.
Yeah, no, I trust you. It's just, it's a little weird.
Then after burritos, I want to go to Rink-O-Mania.
Rink-O-Mania? Okay, what's Rink-O-Mania?
Now, contrast all of this and how Elle makes Mike feel to what Will's speech to Mike in the van makes him feel.
See your coat of arms here? It's a heart. And I know it's sort of on the nose, but that's what holds this whole party together. Heart. Because, without heart, we'd all fall apart.
Will makes him feel special, like he is a hero. And Will says this earnestly because he knows Mike better than anybody. Will knows Mike. Mike knows that Will knows Mike. And according to Will, Mike makes Elle feel, although she normally feels like she's a mistake, that she's not a mistake and that she's better for being different. This is exactly what Mike wants to hear and what Mike, the character, needs. In the first 2 seasons, he's the hero of the party. He thinks up plans, he motivates others to take action, and he's willing to sacrifice himself for his friends. He'll do anything for them, especially for Will. That was the Mike that audiences came to love when he was more himself and before he got himself in a relationship with Elle. Will's words clearly affect Mike. And why is that? It's not like Mike did not know that Elle needs him. She had made clear to him that it pained her that he couldn't say he loves her. The reason why Will's words affected Mike was because Will was describing someone he could love intensely and romantically, someone who would complete him, a person who needs him, a person who he doesn't have to feel insecure with, a person that Mike can be a hero to. And of course, Will was describing himself. Will feels like a mistake. Mike makes Will feel better. To him, Mike is his hero, his knight in shining armor, as he depicted in his painting.
That was you guys who saved me. That was you guys.
Looks like it's gonna be up to us again.
It always is, isn't it?
And Will was describing himself pushing Mike away, ripping off the Band-Aid because he's afraid he'll lose him if he confesses his love for him. It was Will's feelings, Will saying these words, that made Mike feel feelings for Elle. Mike's love confession, quote unquote, to Elle in the finale was his confessing his love to the idea of Elle that Will planted in his mind. But the real person Mike loved was Will himself. This all points to the fact that, well, Mike and Will are kind of perfect for each other. They not only like the same things like D&D, Nintendo, and even singing.
Nobody wants to know you now. You don't like it?
No.
Turn around. Look at what you see.
But they each provide the other what they deeply need. And we know that these two hardly ever lie to each other, and when they communicate, their relationship strengthens, while Mike and Elle constantly lie to each other and bring each other down when they talk. Will's lie to Mike about the origin of the painting is a huge plot hole, and again, if this were a girl giving this painting secretly from herself to Mike, everyone would be cheering for her and him to get together, and they'd be saying that, Mike, the perfect person for you is right there. Next exhibit. Exhibit L, the effect of the love confession, quote unquote, on Elle. We've talked about Mike and Will complementing and needing each other. Mike wants someone who needs him. What motivated Mike this season was wanting to be needed by Elle. But what was Elle's character arc this season? Does she need Mike the way Mike wants her to? The A plot is telling us that Elle wants Mike to say that he loves her, and he does so in the finale. It's exactly what she asked for, so that should resolve the arc, right? We'll see what actually happens, but let's first talk about Elle's journey, her arc in season 4, from being dependent to becoming independent. The beginning of the season, the first scenes established Elle's arc this season, her problem that she doesn't feel like she belongs. She was bullied and she couldn't fit in California. And her partial memory, where she thinks she killed all these other kids, makes her feel like she's a monster. This is the continuation of her arc starting from season 1 of finding a family and feeling like a normal girl.
You're a very brave girl. You know that, don't you? Thank you.
In learning what is normal, she also gets an idea of what romance is from daytime TV soap operas.
Erica, I am this way because of you.
Me? Me?
Mm-hmm. You have made me wild and impetuous, just like you.
Impetuous.
People are going to be aghast.
People are going to be
They're
aghast.
gonna love it.
When Mike takes her in, which is kind of dumb luck when you think about it, there's still a lot she doesn't know. When she has her first kiss with Mike, when Mike kisses her, seconds before that, she was thinking of him as her brother.
Will you be like my brother?
Mike is the first person to ever show care for her, and so he's extremely important to her. Now, I don't mean to insult Elle by comparing her to a baby animal, but there is a way in which she kind of imprints on Mike and is completely understandably going to idealize him in a way. She knows nothing else.
Is Mike a good kisser?
I don't know.
He's my first boyfriend.
In season 3, she's having some kind of normal teen romance drama with Mike, but by the time season 4 starts, she is in crisis. She's feeling like an outsider. She cannot fit in. And this is where the romance with Mike acts as kind of like a substitute for normality for Elle. She uses their relationship to try to make herself feel normal. She constructs a fantasy about herself and a fantasy about her relationship with Mike.
I want today to be about me and you.
And because it has to be perfect, that means it's also fragile. Propping up this relationship is her attempt to address her feeling deep down that she is a monster, that she's not normal. She's presenting a fake image of herself to Mike because Mike, in her mind, can't possibly love the real her, especially this Elle who has no powers.
I'm the monster.
No, Elle, you're not the monster. You saved me. Do you understand? You saved me.
Elle thinks it's her powers that get Mike's love. Now that she doesn't have them, she needs to make something up. Elle is also trying to present herself as cool with the popular crowd. When Angela and her friends horribly bully Elle still pleads with Angela to continue her lie with Mike and to tell Mike that it was all a joke and that they're friends. She's not talking to Mike. She's still committed to the lie. And in her self-loathing, she's still trying to seek approval from a person who won't give it to her. Elle felt like a monster for hitting Angela, and I am on team hit Angela, by the way. But when Elle did this, her boyfriend did freak out about it. He doesn't reach out to her emotionally or try to comfort her after this horrible experience. He can't say he loves her. Her picture-perfect relationship she had imagined in her head while writing letters to Mike was supposed to paper over her problems and make all of these feelings go away, but it's not happening.
You think I'm a monster too.
When she says he doesn't say he loves her, he points out her superpowers, but that means nothing to her. Not only because she doesn't have her powers any longer, but also because she just wants to feel loved as a person.
You know what I think of you. You're the most incredible person in the world. And you're a superhero.
Not anymore.
She concludes that she's not getting what she needs from Mike, and it's more than just about Mike. She says that she doesn't belong anywhere, and she wants to, when she gets the opportunity, she wants to become a superhero again. If she can't fit in, she will be a lone superhero. When she decides to go with Dr. Owen, she leaves a note for Mike, tellingly signed, from Elle. Elle has decided she doesn't need this relationship, and honestly, I think she had made that decision already when Mike entered her room to talk to her with the egos, and she's not talking to him.
She didn't look fine.
There's nothing to say.
So Elle leaves Mike to be a superhero and to figure herself out. At the Nina Project, she learns that Dr. Brenner is alive, but also that his ambitions and not her mistakes caused all of the tragic events that take place in the series. It was actually Brenner's responsibility and his choice that led to all of these events, and this leads to Elle's most important moment in the season.
Now I know the truth. It is not me. It is you. You are the monster.
Elle also realizes that despite her complex feelings towards Dr. Brenner, she does not owe him forgiveness.
Goodbye, Papa.
She is done pleading with her abusers. She knows that she will get nothing from them and she owes them nothing. And this realization is her emancipation. Brenner's manipulation and abuse of Elle also meant that her own powers, this part of her identity, was associated with pleasing an abuser.
Incredible.
She was supposedly loved by Dr. Brenner, Papa, not for the selfless, caring person that Elle is, but for her powers. Her journey in season 4 is her realizing that she does not need the approval or love of others. She can be her own judge of her own actions. She doesn't need a man or a boy to approve. She can be her own superhero, not someone else's. And she needed to be separate from Mike for her to realize this. So during the love confession in the finale, when Mike says, "You're my superhero," it's actually the opposite of what both Mike needs and what Elle needs at this time in their personal arcs. Mike doesn't want to be a discount Lois Lane to a Superman, and Elle doesn't want to be seen and loved for her powers. Mike doesn't actually point out things that he loves about Elle besides her powers and wearing a Benny Burger shirt.
You can do anything. You can fly. You can move mountains. I believe that. I really do.
So when Mike tells her she's a superhero, well, let's look at her reaction.
You're my superhero. And I can't lose you. Okay? Do you hear me? I can't lose you.
Mike wants to be needed, and Elle is learning to stop needing. Their characters are diverging. Meanwhile, Mike knows somebody who does need Mike and always will. Now, many will say, and this was my first impression too when I first watched it, that Mike's monologue helps Elle gather her strength and take on Vecna. Now, I'm not saying it was harmful to Elle. However, I would say that it actually didn't help much. And let's actually look at the clip and see what the actual instigating moment was where Elle gathered her strength.
You can move mountains. I believe that. I really do. But right now, you just have to fight, okay? Elle, do you hear me? You need to fight. You have to fight. Fight!
We see that it was not Mike's love confession. It was Elle seeing that Max was about to die and Mike yelling that she needs to fight. And it's also unclear that Elle believes Mike's love confession. because there are some inconsistencies between what he says and past events in the show, some of which are things Elle knows about. First off, he only starts making this confession when Will pushes Mike to do it, when Elle was dying, and even then, Mike had to muster the effort to do it. He says he loved her the moment he saw her, but in season 1, that's actually not true. Within a day of taking her in, he's actually scheming to have his mom take her to Penhurst, the insane asylum.
Listen. In the morning, she sneaks around my house, goes to the front door, and rings my doorbell. My mom will answer and know exactly what to do. So send her back to Penhurst, wherever she comes from. We'll be totally in the clear. And tomorrow night, we go back out. And this time, we find Will.
He schemes about this with the other boys within earshot of Elle. It would have been more believable for Mike to have said a different moment that he fell in love with her, like when she saved his life. Instead, the writers chose a moment that Elle could know was a lie. Also in season 1, Mike was so upset about losing Will that he hated her at times or was very angry with her.
You hurt me. Do you understand? What you did sucks. Lucas was right about you. All along.
Mike says here that his life started the day he met her.
I feel like my life started that day we found you in the woods.
But does he really? He actually jumps off a cliff knowing he will probably die when Troy is bullying Dustin. And Mike stares into that lake for a long time before making the decision, the same lake he believes Will died in.
Mike, don't do it. Seriously, don't do it, man. Seriously, don't. Troy,
I don't think it's a good idea, man.
Mike, don't. Dentist office opens in 5, 4, 3, 2, Mike! 1.
And then we have Mike apologizing for not saying I love you more often.
I'm sorry I don't say it more.
It's not established he ever said that to her face, at least. And then he says the reason is he thinks that by saying it, it will hurt more. But that doesn't make any sense. Elle was saying their relationship was not working, specifically because Mike was not saying he loved her. So I'm like, huh? Mike's words here are contradicted by his actions, and sometimes they're just words that he took verbatim from what Will said to him in the van that did not fit his relationship with Elle. Then, after Elle drives off of Vecna, she is trying to revive Max. And when she does so, we get a full montage of several scenes of memories, of happy memories that she has with Max. We never got any such montage with Mike. We only got like a single scene, like a couple seconds. It's not like there was a lack of sweet moments, such as their first kisses, their reunion in season 2, their snowball date. We didn't see those, but with Max, we get this whole set of memories. And some of those memories involve Max saying certain things that seem significant.
Not Hopper. Not Mike. You. There's more to life than stupid boys.
These quotes that Elle decides to think about moments after Mike said he loved her seem like a very deliberate choice to me. And it seems to underscore her arc throughout the whole season of becoming self-reliant and independent. And then, of course, we have the fact that Mike's love confession did not work. The goal was to stop Vecna and save Max so that he couldn't open the fourth gate. Now, this contrasts with what a very young Elle is able to accomplish against Henry, against one in the lab in 1979. Henry had taught this young Elle, just like number 8 would teach Elle when she gets older, that she can fuel her powers by tapping into a memory that makes her angry.
He had figured it out. He had found his strength in a memory from his past. Something that made him sad, but also angry. Do you maybe have a memory like that?
This definitely was how Henry fueled his power, but when he's levitating a young Elle, Elle is able to break out of that position because she gets a memory of her mother and her mother's love.
I love you.
As a result, this very young, inexperienced child is able to defeat Henry, of all people, who will become Vecna. This is the show establishing a rule that for Elle, love fuels her power much more strongly than hate and anger do. So if that's true, why did Mike's confession of love for Elle not give her the strength she needed? When Mike says that he loves her, we actually see the Vecna vines around Elle tighten. What actually gives her the strength is seeing Max in danger and Mike saying that she needed to fight. Then she gives her rah yell, showing that she's tapping into her anger in order to get strength. And then, of course, we get the aftermath of the love confession. 2 days pass between the confrontation with Vecna and when their pizza van arrives in Hawkins. We learn in the meantime that Mike and Elle are now hardly talking.
Did she talk to you at all?
Not much. I mean, a little bit.
Now, why is this? Mike had done exactly what Elle said she needed him to do earlier in the season. Why is there no resolution of that arc? There's no heart-to-heart scene between the two of them, while we had several heart-to-heart scenes between Mike and Will this season. It seems that after Mike's love confession, that they've grown colder and more distant. Now, why would that be? I would say that maybe Elle came to a realization, hearing the love confession, that does not bode well for their future as a couple. Finally, from a feminist standpoint, we should value Elle's experience and her testimony over the words that a boy might tell her. Earlier in the season, Elle clocked Mike for not being able to say that he loves her and not giving her the kind of comfort and support she needs, and for looking at her like a freak, which he kind of did. In real life, when a girl decides to break things off with a guy, it's quite common for him to undergo some performances like saying he loves her or buying gifts like flowers. Sound familiar? Things that distract from his actual actions that are designed to make her doubt her judgment and possibly take him back. But at the end of the season, Elle does not seem very wowed by Mike's words. And I think as viewers, her point of view should at least be valued as equally, if not more, than what Mike says about how he feels about her. And another reminder that this is the one romantic couple in the show where saying I love you is something that needs to be said. There's an excellent post someone made that is reposted on Reddit. They talk about the importance of proving things to the audience, not just saying something is true, but actually showing it. So if someone's lying, they're not going to say, I am lying while lying. That would be ridiculous. Instead, writers present contradictions between what is said and what actually is going on in the show. And this person actually takes pretty much every line in Mike's love confession to Elle and points out how they actually apply more to Will. Who does Mike love at first sight? We know that Mike, when he was in kindergarten, approached Will with kind of a proposal that they be friends, who immediately, just by seeing him, felt a connection to him. Who can Mike not live without? In season 1, he almost dies jumping into the same lake he, at the time, believed Will died in. He also spends all of seasons 1 and 2 fighting to save Will. I love you on your good days and your bad days. Well, that describes Mike with Will when he was possessed by the Mind Flayer in the second season. Despite the fact it was a very bad week for Will, and in fact that he might be spying for the Mind Flayer, Mike never left his side. He's doing everything he can to save Will's life. And Mike is the one who points out that closing the gate and defeating the Mind Flayer will kill Will, something that Mike will not let happen, clearly. So talk about a bad day. Will is the monster that is threatening Hawkins. All right, finally, the last exhibit. Exhibit M, the painting lie. This is an example of what writers call Chekhov's gun. It refers to a gun that appears in a play. If it is there for the audience to see, there has to be a reason for it to be there. It has to fire at some point. And the principle here is that any detail in a story should serve a purpose in the overall narrative to fulfill reader expectations. If it's not going to be fired, it shouldn't be hanging there. So we have a setup that has to be resolved in the 5th season. Will lied about the origin of the painting, when in fact it came entirely from Will. Now, we know that Mike is not an idiot. He can put 2 and 2 together. He's the one who figures out a number of things in this show, realizing that the Mind Flayer is spying through Will, finding the phone number for the Nina project in the pen. There are many other examples. And here there are things that are immediately suspicious about this painting that make 0 sense and don't align with Will's explanation. Elle doesn't like Dungeons and Dragons. Why would she commission a painting of a D&D scene as a personal gift to Mike? One that Elle doesn't even appear in. Also, Mike knows from Elle's letter to him that Will was making a painting for someone he likes and painting it secretly. Now, unless they've completely abandoned consistency and Mike's character traits, Mike will find out the actual origin of the painting in the 5th season, if it hasn't already happened and we are going to see it in a flashback. Now, Exhibit M is not proof that Mike likes Will, but there's a reason it's there. It's either there to make Mike realize that the first time he felt romantic love was when someone was describing Will, and force Mike to sort out his feelings about Will and Elle, or it's completely pointless. And another thing this show establishes is that Mike and Will are usually completely honest about everything with each other. It's established in their first scene.
It was a 7. Huh? The wall. It was a 7.
This is underscored over and over again. And the painting lie may very well be Will's only lie to Mike that he's ever made. And it's on something so important, and it interferes with something as important and intimate as Mike's relationship with his girlfriend. This is all stuff that needs to be resolved. We're told over and over again, it's said several times in the course of this series, that friends don't lie to each other. So Mike and Will as best friends aren't supposed to lie to each other. However, we are told as an audience,
friends don't lie. Yeah, well, boyfriends lie.
A lot of viewers think that the entire California plotline with Mike, Will, and Elle is a waste of time this season. Now, unless they simply wanted to give their entire cast something to do, which would kind of be poor writing, what's more likely is that all of these things between Mike, Will, and Elle, including, first and foremost, the painting lie, are set up for Season 5. I am now going to move on to non-diegetic evidence, a term that I will explain, don't worry. I just want to make a couple of honorable mentions of details that indicate Mike and Will might get together. Okay, first, scene blocking. Mike and Will are almost always next to each other whenever possible. They're inseparable. And here in this bottom shot from Season 3, we see Elle by herself and the canon couples, Lucas Max, Jonathan Nancy, together, and Mike and Will, for some reason, sitting next to each other apart from everybody else. This not long after having a huge argument. Also, when Mike talks to Will throughout the series, he uses a special voice that Byler fans call the Will voice. He usually is kind of angry and irritated with everybody else, but with Will, he's particularly gentle in how he talks.
Michael! Coming! Awesome. You haven't even spoken a word to her.
Hey, I don't...
You really think so? Yeah. Yeah, I really do.
He reserves it exclusively for Will. We don't see this with anyone else, not even Elle.
Yeah, they do say it makes you crazy.
What makes you crazy?
You ever heard that term? I think it'll be easier if we're a team. Friends. Best friends. You've seen it. I've been bullied my entire life. I mean, I know what it's like.
No, you don't.
Okay. What don't I understand?
How far is Nina from Vegas?
From Vegas? As long as Susie's coordinates are right, about another 90 miles. Why?
And then we have the lip stares. Mike's eyes are frequently wandering down towards Will's lips. Whether this was a conscious actor choice or just an involuntary thing Finn Wolfhard does to indicate a more intimate connection, we don't know. But it's there on the screen. It is a reality. All right, now let's get to the non-diegetic evidence. Now, what the hell is diegetic? That's a $10 word. Well, it means it's existing or occurring within the world of a narrative rather than something that's external to that world. So everything we've talked about happens within the world of Stranger Things, how Mike and Elle and Will treat each other. However, these are things that the show creators have inserted, things like symbols or Easter eggs that indicate that Byler is a possibility. The first thing is the music that plays when Mike believes Will is dead in season 1 and he returns home and hugs his mother. There's a song that plays, and, well, actually, I want to say a lot more about that song, so I'm going to save that for the final points. So I'll get back to that. Here's a scene early in the show where Mike's mom is talking to him while he's hiding Elle in his closet. She's telling him that he can talk to her about how he feels with Will going missing. Now on the surface, it looks like she's showing concern because he's worried about his best friend. However, it has an uncanny resemblance to a scene in the season 4 finale where Jonathan is talking to Will and knows Will is gay and is letting him know that he can talk to him. I'll just show some clips where he mirrors what Karen Wheeler says.
I feel like you used to come to me more for help. I miss talking to you. I really miss it.
I want you to feel like you can talk to me.
Right now, we need to talk more than ever.
All this that's been going on with Will.
I don't want you to forget that I'm here. And I'll always be here.
I'm here for you. Okay.
Because you're my brother. And I love you. And there is nothing in this world, okay? Absolutely nothing that will ever change that.
I never want you to feel like you have to hide anything from me.
And then I'll play the original conversation, and you'll see that it's possible that she knows her son might have romantic feelings for Will.
I'm not mad at you.
No?
No, of course not. All this that's been going on with Will, I can't imagine what it's been like for you. I want you to feel like you can talk to me. I never want you to feel like you have to hide anything from me. I'm here for you. Okay.
Now, I did not make this an exhibit because, again, it's ambiguous. It's the parallel here. It's a writer's decision to make a later scene dealing with the canon gay character that gives the original scene new meaning, or clearer meaning, depending on how you look at it. Next is the way this show has used the word crazy to mean love. We have this clip.
He's not my boyfriend.
I think you better tell him that.
What?
Only love makes you that crazy, sweetheart. And that damn stupid.
Then there's this clip.
Yeah, they do say it makes you crazy.
What makes you crazy?
You ever heard that term? You know, like the phrase, like, blank makes you crazy, like the word.
And of course, Mike and Will had this conversation.
I don't know. Sometimes I feel like I'm going crazy.
Me too.
Hey, well, if we're both going crazy, then we'll go crazy together, right?
Yeah. Crazy together.
The next is this shot in season 3. We have Mike and Will framed behind Max, and she happens to wear the rainbow pride flag and the transgender pride flag colors on her shirt sleeves, which are right beneath Mike and Will. Now, one might say that this is coincidental, but it's clear looking at the behind the scenes documentaries about the show that the creators and the crew spend a lot of attention to detail. So I wouldn't put it past them that this is a deliberate choice. The next thing is that in one of the promo videos for season 5, the actor who portrays Lucas, Caleb McLaughlin, shares that the crew worked with the actors to come up with details for their characters, including coming up with custom musical playlists for their characters.
I like going through the fittings because it's very detailed according to our character's personality and what we're into. Season 1, they asked us, like, what is our character's favorite color? What do you think he likes to eat? Like, it's a whole thing. We created playlists for our characters as well.
It was an exercise in developing their own characters. Well, the official Spotify playlist for Mike Wheeler had as its first track Small Town Boy, which is a 1980s gay anthem of a gay man who leaves their small town for the big city where they can be out and gay. If you look for this official playlist now, you won't find it because it was taken down by Netflix for some reason. You can only find a copy of this playlist made by a fan. Now, that's highly suspicious to me. Next, at the end of season 3, we have the kiss between Elle and Mike, where she says she loves him too. Of course, Mike is standing in front of a closet, but also between them, Elle is holding on to a teddy bear that belongs to Will. We see this teddy bear from season 1. So when Mike and Elle have this one-sided kiss, Will is symbolically between the two of them. And it is something that was kept in the closet. The symbolism is pretty on the nose here, if one accepts Byler as a possibility. Now, speaking of closets, let's look at Mike's bedroom at the start of season 4. He has a one-way sign pointing towards a closet. That's a little telling and an interesting choice. Also, there are pictures of muscular men, fantasy men, on his walls. Contrast this to other male characters in this show who either have scantily clad women in their bedrooms like Billy, or who talk about women they're physically attracted to. Mike has no such conversations in the show so far.
She cute? Think Phoebe Cates, only hotter.
Then, in Rink-O-Mania, when Mike and Will have their argument, there's a point where Mike gets defensive and a song plays in the background. And this is in the original soundtrack, and that song is titled In the Closet.
We used to be best friends. Well, then maybe you should have reached out more. I don't know. But why is this on me?
That's a bit on the nose. Then later in season 4, when Elle is in the lab and Dr. Brenner is explaining why it's called the Nina Project.
Nicholas Delarak wrote an opera called Nina. It's the story about a young woman whose lover was killed in a duel. Nina was so traumatized that she buried the memory. Every day she would return to the train station to await her lover's return, a return that would never be.
They could have chosen any memory loss story, but they chose something that is an obvious parallel to Elle waiting for Mike. Elle was hoping to see her lover at the airport, but he didn't arrive. Dr. Brenner also says,
if only Nina could know the truth.
Now, Elle already knew at this point in the season that Mike had trouble saying he loved her. So what was the truth? What else did Elle need to know? Do I need to spell this out? Then when Elle and Mike reunite near the end of the season, they frame the shot so that Will is standing between them, looking from afar. Not only is this a classic love triangle framing, but it also is a near exact parallel to what happens in the same episode where Robin is pining after Vicky, looking at a seemingly straight person at the right who seems to be in a heterosexual relationship. Also in both cases, seemingly heterosexual person on the right looks at the person looking at them immediately afterward with a conflicted expression. These are in the same episode, and also we know that Robin does get the girl in the end. Sure, Will's gaze was focused on Elle and not on Mike, but these two shots are virtually identical. Then in the finale episode, we have Elle explaining her piggyback plan to the rest of the California crew. She draws a diagram on the window using the frost on the window, and it shows her getting into Max's mind to then piggyback off of Max to get at Vecna. And she draws a circle around Max and Vecna. When we return to this same shot later, we see that all of the figures perfectly corresponds to characters in the shot. We have Elle by herself in the middle, and we have Mike and Will together with a circle drawn around them. They even redid the drawing because in the first shot, the camera is moving forward so that the two figures on the right are gonna move beyond Mike and Will. But in the second shot, they have redone the drawing to get the figures to match them perfectly. This was the single shot, by the way, that converted me from a skeptic to someone who thought this actually is a possibility. It's just too specific for it to be random. It had to be deliberate. Next is Mike's shirt through most of season 4. He has this triangle on his heart that points to his left, and in nearly every shot where he's wearing this shirt, it is pointing towards Will. Like here, like here, like here, like here, even though his arm's around Elle, it's pointing at Will, and here. There's a few times it points away from Will, like in this scene where Will is actually actively misdirecting Mike away from himself towards Elle, which only underscores the fact that this arrow and what direction it points in is significant. Also, a triangle over the heart is significant to people who know LGBT history. It was actually the symbol, the pink triangle was the symbol that the Nazis put on gay people who were in the concentration camps, and the gay liberation movement reappropriated that symbol to denote gay pride and gay rights. So this is also a gay symbol on Mike's shirt being over his heart. And if this seems reaching, I will play this clip featuring one of the costume designers and the thought that she put behind triangles on clothes in this show.
The yellow overshirt that she wears for quite a while in the season has like a leaf print, and then we custom printed it, so I added some triangles and some equality symbols to kind of have an Easter egg that there's some LGBTQ plus imagery within her outfit. You know, I felt that was important to help represent her for that.
So yes, this triangle on Mike's shirt is a detail that they put for a reason. Next is the fruit on pizza incident at the pizza shop, where Mike and Elle are about to have a heart-to-heart conversation, but Argyle interrupts with a pineapple pizza. But Elle's enjoying this pizza that has fruit on it. And fruit is a historically derogatory term for gay men. And Mike doesn't want to eat this fruity pizza. In fact, he uses the word,
"That's blasphemous, putting fruit on pizza?"
And he's not going to try it. And Argyle and Elle comically make him eat it. The scene then cuts away to Will, and you have to listen carefully or read the subtitles. You actually hear that Mike actually likes the pizza after all.
I'm not a dog.
Now, this seems like a silly conclusion and maybe a bit reaching, but this wouldn't be the only time this show uses food to represent homosexuality. When Robin and Vicky are volunteering at the community center in the last episode, we have Vicky put peanut butter on 2 slices of bread and call it a peanut butter on peanut butter monstrosity. And if you're a gay person like me, you react like I did, like, ha ha ha, that's a gay joke. And then Robin responds by handing over a jar of jelly, which kind of represents compatibility between the two of them as well. And this is all expressed through food. So this show is no stranger to gay subtext. And okay, what was the point of the whole Mike must eat fruit on pizza scene? It didn't advance the plot at all. All it did was give us some gay subtext. And then we have the final scene of the whole season. And there's no dialogue for the last couple of minutes. And it's clear and completely fair for us to take hints from the visuals we see of what might happen in the 5th and final season. So we have Mike, Will, Elle, and the others going out onto the field to look at the destruction in Hawkins. And Elle keeps walking forward, and Mike stays behind to stand with Will. Elle then finds some wilted flowers on the ground, and these are purple-yellow flowers that match exactly the flowers in the bouquet that Mike gave her at the start of the season. A clear symbol of their relationship, and these flowers have wilted. Elle looks at the flowers, and then she stands up and looks in the distance at Hawkins. It seems to suggest that she is moving on from her relationship with Mike to take on her responsibility of being a superhero for Hawkins. Arguably, she still needs her friends. Maybe that's part of her journey in season 5 to rediscover that. But the other people in the scene, they easily could have just been grouped together, and the scene would have still emphasized the central role that Elle will play in the final season. But that's not what they did. They create 3 pairs: Jonathan and Nancy, Joyce and Hopper, both canon couples, and then we have Mike and Will, who are not a canon couple, but it is suggested that they will be. It also suggests that these pairs will be teamed up with each other in the final season also. In the final shot, Mike and Will are dead center in the frame. It's the last image we see this season, suggesting that they're going to play a central role as a team in season 5. Also, we get a brief shot of Mike and Will breathing in sync, and Mike has said that they should be a team, and that's also strongly hinted at when they're at Hopper's cabin, and Mike says, "We will take on Vecna together." We also know that the show establishes that love can be stronger than hate. So one of my favorite Byler theories is that Mike and Will and their love for each other will be key to defeating Vecna in the final season. And maybe their breathing in sync will be part of that. All right, now let's look at some statements from the actors that suggest that Mike and Will get together. Noah Schnapp has openly cheered for a Byler conclusion. This is a tweet he sent before Volume 2 of Season 4. And I think it's significant that he is a gay man. Given the history of queer baiting and the pain that causes the LGBT community, it's not likely to me that Noah Schnapp himself would be teasing Byler if it weren't going to be true. Mike's actor, on the other hand, cannot be openly teasing Byler because his character does not canonically like Will back, at least not yet. However, he has said some things that are kind of suspicious. Here's a promo interview for season 4 saying that Mike is trying to be as normal as possible this season.
I think Mike's just trying to be as normal as possible and try to keep on a normal path.
Now, what could that possibly be? At Hawkins High School, he's an outsider playing D&D with Eddie. And he also takes on an edgy, kind of metal look that resembles Eddie. And pretty much all Mike does in season 4 is play D&D and try to be a boyfriend to Elle. So when he's talking about trying to be normal, he's almost certainly talking about trying to be a boyfriend to a girl. And then at a fan event, he was asked what was a difficult scene for him to shoot. And he mentions the van scene because, okay, let me just play it.
How is he this clueless right now? Like with the Will scene, like in the car, I was like, what? How? I remember asking the difference, like, why would he not know this? And they were like, don't worry, it'll pay off in the end. And so I trust them. But yeah, those are kind of the hardest parts. Yeah.
Thank you.
So what kind of payoff would that be? Almost certainly it means that Mike does learn the truth about the painting, that it actually came fully from Will. So the painting lie was not simply to prop up Mike and Elle. It's a setup for something to happen in season 5. And then finally, perhaps the most revealing statement from an actor that suggests that Byler will become a reality. At a recent convention, Noah Schnapp was on stage with Cara Buono, who portrays Mike Wheeler's mom. Noah was asked by a fan in the audience something about how Mike and Will's relationship has evolved. They might have asked about the romantic possibility, I don't know. But either way, Noah panics and he's unsure of what to say. And keep in mind, when you watch this clip, as you can see, Noah has openly shipped Byler before, and he also told the press, made completely clear that Will is gay and in love with Mike. But he and Kara are so circumspect here. I just have to play the clip.
Because they're a big hot topic over the internet.
Oh, you guys can't get me in trouble. I don't want to say anything. Spoiler. Okay. How's their relationship evolved? I mean, I think it's had its ups and downs in the beginning. I feel like you could tell right from the beginning Mike and Will were like a pair, and it was Lucas and Dustin who were a pair, and Mike was always super protective of Will, and Will always leaned on him. And you could never really tell if it was like something romantic or just like a really special friendship. And then as it goes on, you kind of realize that Will does have... Am I allowed to say that?
I think that, well, I don't know. We can tell!
I don't know. I don't want to talk about this, but
I think what the internet is saying, like, is like, you know, as they've been close. No, well, you know, like, you know, I keep saying Finn, Mike, like they're very close, but they like diverge, right? Like Mike ends up like kind of going on his journey, and then Will kind of like is sort of stuck with his, like he doesn't want to like leave like their friendship, right? Like he's not kind of ready to grow up yet, you know? So I think in season 5, because I know like as an actor, like what happens is like you think about things from like as you're approaching it as an actor, but I think from like a story perspective, you just see like a friendship evolving where, you know, when you have a friendship, like people just go through different things, and sometimes they come apart, they come together, and they come apart, they come together, and like...
And I will say...
and we'll see what happens.
Yeah, and they... Actually, I'm not gonna say it.
So why is Noah Schnapp so nervous to talk about something that he openly talked about before? Is it because he now knows the conclusion? And if Byler were not endgame, would they be so nervous about giving away a spoiler on the question of whether the two of them are romantic? Them not being romantic isn't news, and they wouldn't be so scared about giving that away. And they don't rule out the possibility of a romantic pairing of Mike and Will. There's been vocal criticism about shows of queerbaiting, and the appropriate response, if Mike and Will were not to get together, would be to, right now, dismiss the possibility and rule it out. However, they don't do that. Next, we look at glimpses we have of the new season, including behind-the-scenes photos. It was strongly hinted in season 4 that Mike and will be a team again in Hawkins. Mike said Hawkins wasn't the same without Will. Now he gets Will back. Well, in the behind-the-scenes pics that are coming out, Mike and Will are kind of always together. Here they are biking with Mike's younger sister, Holly. Very cute pictures. Here's another photo from that same set. And it's now confirmed that the second episode of season 5 is called The Vanishing of Blank. And we have been told that season 5 will return to season 1 themes. So it's quite likely, in my opinion, that Holly is the person who's kidnapped, because then, again, it's a young child, which, if true, would immediately involve Mike and Will, and the show is making clear that they have scenes with them and Holly. Probably so we get a sense of how they relate to each other, how close they are. Byler fans have pointed out that in season 1, Jonathan and Nancy took on the Demogorgon together while trying to rescue Jonathan's younger brother. This might be a parallel to that, perhaps. And then we get this next photo where Mike and Will are alone together in romantic sunset lighting. Where are they going? Are they on a mission of some kind? And this is a photo, by the way, that Noah Schnapp himself put on Instagram. Again, it's important to me that a gay man posted this because of the danger of queerbaiting. So Mike and Will have plenty of scenes together in season 5, and they'll be having these scenes after Mike almost certainly finds out the origin of Will's painting and that Will painted it because Will loves Mike. So unless they talk about it and Mike rejects Will, there is going to be romantic tension to the max between these two. We also have learned that they are casting for a young Mike and Will and a young Jonathan, apparently in 1979, when Mike and Will were 8 years old. We know that these two boys have been best friends since they were 5. So why would they do a flashback to when Mike and Will were best friends while they were 8 years old? Flashbacks are often used to explain present-day actions. We saw that Hopper in Season 1 was dealing with his grief of losing his daughter. In Season 4, Elle's flashbacks reveal to her Dr. Brenner's motives and how horribly he treated her and the other kids. Flashbacks are important for explaining and changing the dynamics of characters in the present. We have very limited information, and so it's hard to predict why this flashback. However, it increases the possibility that Mike and Will's relationship is something this season is exploring. So that's my evidence, but we're not done yet. I have some things I really want to say in the final thoughts that I think are important. But first I must pronounce judgment. Having reviewed the weight of the evidence, I have come to a verdict. Michael Wheeler, I hereby find that, beyond a reasonable doubt, you are guilty of gay love in the first degree. But I do want to point people who are looking for more evidence of Byler to another video called 101 Reasons to Love Mike and Will. I love this video. It's by Angel with Nightmares. It's just really well done, and I highly recommend. I will leave a link in the video description. All right, some final thoughts. First, if Mike and Will are not going to end up being a romantic couple, if this is an unrequited crush from Will, this is not how you write an unrequited crush story. I'm just going to read this excellent post on Tumblr by Byler Nation. It says, "You are not delusional. I know it's been said a million times in different fonts, but Byler is definitely endgame because it genuinely doesn't make any sense if it's not. Yes, one-sided love is common in real life and in fiction, but who writes an unrequited love story like this? When was the last time one of the main characters of a show was in love with one of the other main characters of a show for all of its seasons, with the narrative very clearly building up to a grand confession and the other person unaware of the depth of these feelings for whatever reason, only for that narrative to end in rejection at the very end of the story?" And then they compare it to Isabella and Phineas from Phineas and Ferb. It looked one-sided all along, but they get together in the end. They continue, "If Byler was meant to be one-sided, the best time, in my opinion, would be to rip the Band-Aid off in Season 3, The Summer of Love. This brought Will's sexuality to the forefront since all his friends were dating girls. They sort of did that with the Byler fight, and then they had Mike bike miles in the rain to apologize, a very common romantic trope. But if Byler was meant to be one-sided, it would have been definitive, and then Mike would have comforted his friend and told him he'll always be there for him and that nothing will change. That would have been sad, but it would have paved the way for Season 4 and 5 to explore the fallout of this and introduce and develop a new, fan-favorite, reciprocated love interest for Will. I would add another moment that they could have gotten this out of the way was when Will gave his veiled love confession to Mike. Mike would have clocked it, they would have talked it out, and then we would have the same thing. Stranger Things makes us fall in love with new characters all the time. Max in Season 2, Robin in Season 3, Eddie in Season 4, but that's not what they did. Byler is literally just the childhood friends to lovers trope. Elle complicates things, but even so, it's not uncommon for characters to date other characters and even confess love to them before realizing who they're actually supposed to be with. What does make Byler spicy and complex is the fact that it doesn't just involve figuring out feelings, it involves figuring out one's sexuality in small-town Indiana in the 80s. But you're not delusional for simply understanding the childhood friends to lovers trope and following along. Usually, unrequited crush storylines are written as short-term crushes and not taken very seriously. See Dustin and Max, or Meng and Aang from Avatar: The Last Airbender. They aren't given this level of narrative weight, paralleled to canon romantic relationships on the show, and given romantically coded fights and conversations that put other pairings to shame. I don't deny that unrequited love can sometimes be a painful narrative tool to help a character grow. But this is not written how those storylines are usually written. You don't make the general audience explicitly aware of a love triangle that has been brewing from the beginning, make clear a character's feelings in the penultimate season, not resolve them, drag it out to the final season, and then just keep the status quo and turbulent relationship in the end. The entire painting situation just follows the miscommunication trope, which is extremely common in romantic storylines, and there'd be no point in writing it this way if it wasn't leading to anything. There is nothing inherently delusional about Byler. Nada. Zip. Zilch. People might make fun of our complicated theories because they obviously only take things at face value and have no imagination or media analysis curiosity. But even if you defenestrate the Byler slides entirely, the 300-part slideshow, there's nothing delusional about believing a couple might break up in a show, even if they've been dating for a long time, especially if there are clear problems in the relationship. There's nothing delusional about believing a character might date someone else, especially if that someone else is a character who is canonically in love with them. That literally happens all the time in countless stories, movies, and shows. The only reason people call us delusional is because they just can't fathom Mike being anything other than straight, since he doesn't, quote, seem that way, unquote. But keep in mind, they also couldn't fathom Will being gay, and look how that turned out for them. Manic pixie dream girls use Mike's "we're friends, friends" comment to argue that Mike made clear he doesn't have any romantic feelings for Will. But I gotta ask, have they seen any film or show ever? When has claiming to be just friends in a defensive tone ever meant that you are truly just friends? Are you just friends, Michael? Are friends electric? I don't know, because that was an extremely self-incriminating thing to say. We just caught you in fruity 4K. Michael Wheeler, 84,000 people know what you are. I assume that's a number of Bylers in the Tumblr hashtag at the time. Bylers don't just have the weight of evidence on our side, we have the weight of some of the most popular romantic storytelling tropes of all time. We aren't delusional, we are right. I couldn't have said it better, and I think that was just a really great post. And next, and I have to say this, Stranger Things should not queerbait queer people. Byler not being endgame would be 100% queerbaiting, and this again is the definition on the screen. Queerbaiting is a marketing technique for fiction and entertainment in which creators hint at but do not depict same-sex romance or other LGBTQ+ representation. The purpose is to attract, bait, a queer or straight ally audience with the suggestion or possibility of relationships or characters that appeal to them, while not alienating homophobic members of the audience or censors by actually portraying queer relationships. This is quite common in TV and media. Perhaps the most notorious instance of this was the show Supernatural, which teased audiences with romantic tension between Dean and Castiel. How that concluded was seen as a big FU to fans of the ship. I think it's pretty clear from this video and its sheer length that there is a long trail of clues and arguably overwhelming evidence for Byler happening instead of Mike and Elle. But unfortunately, it would not be that surprising if this is queerbait. The creators and the cast have not ruled out Mike and Will possibly being a romantic pair. If this is queerbait, then this would be fucked up. The Duffer Brothers are socially progressive, and they almost certainly know that queer people are angry about queerbaiting when it happens. So if Byler is not endgame, they should have dismissed the possibility by now. However, Netflix and its affiliates internationally have been explicitly fueling the flames, teasing at and hinting at Byler. And let's look at some posts in social media. Here's a post from Netflix Nordic calling the two boyfriends. The next slide is Netflix India, I believe, showing Mike saying crazy together with Will, and it says, "How to say I love you without saying I love you 101. In this next one, the Stranger Things Twitter account makes a parallel between Mike freaking out looking at the Mind Flayer and freaking out looking at some women's lingerie. And the show creators, by the way, have gone on record saying that the Mind Flayer is a metaphor for puberty. Now, is this Mike Wheeler freaking out at his own sexual attraction to women? Someone says, "Oh, Mike thinks the Mind Flayer is sexy," and they respond, "Oh no, not that." And here they say, "Oh no, he definitely does not." Here's another post from Stranger Things. This was Mike having trouble saying love makes you crazy. Then they post, "This also makes him crazy," and they post a picture of Will. Now here's some promotional billboards and posters where Mike and Will are paired together. In the bottom set, they are posed exactly like two canon romantic couples are. In official promotional posters for season 4, you had canon romantic couples in the foreground looking at each other, and we also see that happening with Mike and Will. They released a Funko Pop of Mike Wheeler, and what is he holding? It is Will's painting. Despite being very cute, it also shows the importance to Mike of that painting. A painting that he was lied to about. Then in a very recent article for Halloween, they posted Halloween costume ideas. And under the couple category, we have romantic couples from various shows, including Joyce and Hopper, and we have Mike and Will. While dressed up as Will, you're required to tell Mike that he's the heart of the costume party. So we are deep into queer baiting territory here if Byler does not happen. And I think this would far surpass every other instance of queer baiting. The sheer quantity of evidence, the fact that there's a 300 plus slide slideshow about Byler, and the fact that queer baiting in these other shows were teased as bromances. They were both canonically straight. However, here we have, with the full season to spare, one of them being gay and in love, and painfully in love with the other. And with the painting lie, they've laid the groundwork for a big confrontation between these two about how they feel for each other. But this isn't even the worst way it would be offensive to queer people. Now here's a post on Tumblr by someone named Team Byler, who has quite a lot of good things to say, who writes, "Questions to ask if ever you have Byler doubt. Do people seriously think that a show centered on nerds and social outcasts shows how awful the popular kids can be, villainizes anti-gay bullies, sides against abusers, supports LGBT plus people, has interracial romance, embraces being different, turns an expected hetero romance into a beautiful platonic friendship, criticizes moral panic evangelism, makes the town freak our hero, shows that love can overcome hate, and whose characters don't want to recreate the nuclear family? Do we really think that show will let a suffering, traumatized gay boy's love be the device for a conventional white hetero couple to be the show's main relationship? If they did this, then they would be sidelining gay characters and gay love in favor of straight people. They would be underscoring to queer people that you're less important. We could have had an inspiring coming out story where Will comes out to his best friend supports him, and Will comes out to his family and finds the strength to take on the dangers of the Upside Down. But if Byler doesn't happen, then the most important purpose of his coming out story is to prop up Mike and Elle. Also, it would feel particularly cruel to a character the show has made the audience sympathize with season after season. Will gets kidnapped in season 1 and is starving, alone, cold, and scared in the Upside Down for several days. He gets impregnated by a monster and literally dies. In season 2, he gets possessed and goes through the pain of being burned alive and goes through the horror of sending people to their deaths against his will. The show makes clear several times that Will is selfless.
He cast Fireball. He could have played it safe, but he didn't. He put himself in danger to help the party.
We saw that little girl, and she was in the sandbox, and she was crying. You gave her your Tonka truck, and I told you we couldn't afford to buy another one.
Gee.
You said she should have it because she's sad. She's sad, Mommy.
Hey.
I love you so much.
And when he taps in Morse code that they need to close the gates, Will says that because he knows it will kill the hive mind and everyone attached to it, including himself. He's willing to sacrifice his life for everyone else. In season 3, we feel his torment tearing down Castle Byers. And in season 4, we feel terrible for Will as he is excluded by Mike and Elle. And he selflessly sacrifices his own love for Mike to help Mike and Elle's relationship. At the beginning of season 3, we learn that Will doesn't think he'll ever fall in love.
Gross.
I don't think you're gonna think it's gross when you fall in love.
I'm not gonna fall in love.
Okay.
Now, why was that put there if it's not a setup to show that Will will be wrong? If Mike and Elle end up together at the end of the series, then nearly every main character will have a significant other. Meanwhile, Will would be alone, and it's pretty much confirmed now that there is no other boy being cast as a potential love interest for him. And if that is the case, that would be kind of fucked up. Why have a gay main character go through all this suffering only for his belief that he'll never find love to be proven right? Stranger Things has set it up so that the audience, including many straight viewers, want Will to be happy. And I think this is one of the strongest arguments for why Byler will be endgame. Despite prevalent homophobia, I think that the vast majority of viewers and the general audience would accept a Byler conclusion, because the show has made us want Will to have a happy ending. Only the most rank homophobes would think otherwise. Now granted, Elle has gone through a lot of trauma as well, but the show has laid the groundwork that her relationship with Mike doesn't thrive without interference from Will, and it's not central to her story. Another thing that supports Byler is that Season 5 will center on Will Byers. The Duffers have said that Will takes center stage again in Season 5. Now, I'm going to read it again for a second time, I think, in this video. I apologize. Will really takes center stage again in 5. This emotional arc for him is what we feel is going to hopefully tie the whole series together. Will is used to being the young one, the introverted one, the one that's being protected. So part of his journey, it's not just sexuality, it's Will coming into his own as a young man. This means that Will's journey of growing up, including coming out as a gay man, is central to the themes of the season. It also hints that he will become heroic in his own right. Now, he's always been heroic in a quieter way before, but heroic now in a more conventional sense. And it makes sense for the final season to come full circle and end where it began. Will's kidnapping set in motion the entire series, but it also leaves unanswered questions. We don't know why he was taken. We don't know why he survived so long in the Upside Down when Barb didn't. There is a theory out there that Will has incipient powers and that Vecna targeted him in order to take them. And we learned that the Upside Down seems to have been created the night Will was kidnapped, or is frozen in time even. So it makes sense that the final season centers on Will. We've been given a strong hint that the opening scene of the season will be a young Will in the Upside Down when he was kidnapped in 1983. They've also cast a young actor to be a CGI double for Will, just as they cast one for a young Elle in Season 4. And in the teaser trailer, it looks like we see the moment where Will arrives in the Upside Down. So we're likely getting multiple flashbacks to his time there. It's strongly hinted that Will has no memories of his time there. So there's the possibility that there's a process in Season 5 of Will recovering his memories, and that's central to the season's plot, just as Elle recovering her memories was crucial to Season 4. And we have the possibility that Will's coming out journey, whatever that is, and with whomever that is tied to his hero arc this season. Perhaps even tied to how he unlocks supernatural powers, if you believe he has powers. It wouldn't be the first time that horror uses the supernatural as a metaphor for sexuality. There's a lot of exciting possibilities here. Just a couple more comments, but first I want to ask you to like the video and subscribe to my channel. I might do more videos on this topic. I definitely want to do more videos on Stranger Things, including what I think Season 1 did right and how I think subsequent seasons fell short. I already have a video on Buffy, and I plan to do more covering that show also, and also other things I like. If you are interested in more Byler content from me, I have an existence on Tumblr as Team Byler. There you get to see me alternate between writing analytical essays and being an excited teenager. The next thing I want to say is that, unlike with the Mike and Elle romance, there is a more powerful story that can be told here that furthers the show's themes, and if Byler does not become reality, this would be a wasted opportunity. There are videos and analyses you can find online that generally agree that there was a decline in the show's quality. It's still a great show, and I, like many of them, still love the show. There's a recent video that has gotten a lot of views called The Frustrating Decline of Stranger Things. I agree with most of their criticisms. I think there are ways the show should repair some of its characterizations of some of the characters, and also restore a sense of stakes, including killing off a main character. But one thing that would universally be praised as ballsy and a writing coup would be a Byler conclusion. Everyone will see it as a deftly executed, slow burn romance that occurred in plain sight over several years. They'd be doing a Nikocado avocado and show that they've been 2 steps ahead of the general audience all along. The Duffer Brothers would be able to point at the long trail of breadcrumbs that we went over in this video and say that they planned this development all along. And then we'd see websites publish news stories like this, which is a fake news story, by the way, that I made. The 27 times Stranger Things hinted at Mike and Will getting together and you totally missed it. It would explain the writing of Mike and Will's characters in the middle seasons, the seasons where many viewers complained that these 2 characters become irrelevant. And it would explain Mike's change of character starting at season 3 and in how he treats Will. It would be clear that it was his internalized homophobia and a struggle in dealing with his feelings for Will. Mike would get a character glow up if they become a romantic couple. Will remind Mike that he's the heart. He will remind him that he's at his best when he fights for and protects others, which in seasons 1 and 2 was mostly Will. Mike accepting that he loves Will would probably mean a return to the old Mike. There's an interview with Finn Wolfhard from earlier this year where he said that there are leader Mike moments. It would make sense that these changes in character coincide with changes in how he relates to Will. His character and the writing of his character would be redeemed in the audience's eyes. Mike and Will live in small-town Indiana in the 1980s, a town that the show highlights has homophobia, a place where its prejudice and conservatism have been highlighted. Jason leads many members of the town to go after the Hellfire Club, and at the end of the season, many residents blame them for opening the gate to hell. Mike and Will being gay and in love would strike at the heart of the conservatism of this town like a bolt of lightning. The conservatism that season 4 built up as being an obstacle between our heroes and defeating Vecna. It is now confirmed that the 6th episode of the last season is titled Escape from Camazotz, which probably is a reference to the popular children's science fantasy novel A Wrinkle in Time, where a central theme is nonconformity. The heroes escape from the planet Camazotz, where everyone conforms and is identical. They are controlled by a hive mind. The main character's love confession helps them escape.
I love you! I love you, Charles Wallace! I love you! Stop it!
This show is setting up a similar conflict with Vecna in various ways, including the reveal that Elle is much more powerful when she taps into thoughts of love. All point toward an ultimate confrontation with Vecna, where love conquers hate. As cliche as it may sound, underdogs banding together and through their loyalty and friendship being able to defeat a seemingly more powerful enemy is an incredibly common, popular, and resonant theme. And that actually was how our heroes prevailed in every other season. Now we return to a song I teased earlier that plays in the background when, in season 1, Mike is hugging his mom thinking that Will is dead. This song plays 2 times during the series so far. It also plays during the ending montage of season 3. The version we hear actually post-dates the 1980s. It's the 2010 cover by Peter Gabriel. The original hero song was done by David Bowie in 1977. And all of you should listen to it to get the full Byler experience. It's about 2 lovers who live on opposite sides of the Berlin Wall, the wall that divided capitalist and communist Berlin, and for the world was a symbol of the Cold War. There's a line in the song saying, "The guns shot above our heads and we kissed as though nothing could fall. And the shame was on the other side." Someone on YouTube writes that this is a heroic love song. Bowie starts out crooning, but pretty soon he ramps up and belts it out hard. This song is about risking getting shot by East German border police and dragged over barbed wire for love. This is about young love against impossible odds. It's about that gloriously tragic fantasy of giving our life in some grandly romantic way to save the life of our beloved, maybe by taking a bullet for them and dying in their arms in the shadow of the Berlin Wall. It's about forbidden love, and David Bowie himself was bisexual and a gay icon definitely in the 1970s. So this resonance in the gay community is as clear as day, where being out about who you are can get you ostracized and killed. Well, this is the song that's playing when Mike is mourning Will, and they play the most romantic line of the entire song.
And the guns, Michael, shout above our heads, and we kiss as though nothing could fall. And the shame is on the other side.
David Bowie's original, which is defiant and triumphant, would be a perfect anti-Vecna song for Will to have on his headphones that gives him the courage to be who he is, reminds him of who he loves, and lets him resist Vecna. Mike and Will might be heroes in more ways than one. On the one hand, they might be a team that saves Hawkins together. A story where two childhood best friends fall in love and become two gay kids who confront the bigotry of Hawkins and yet save the town would be a story that's incredibly resonant and powerful. All right, finally, my last comment. This is important to me personally, and if it's not already clear, I feel quite invested in this fictional gay romance. I think it's a near universal gay experience to have an unrequited crush on a close same-sex childhood friend. I'm a Byler with a sense of melancholy. Having that childhood friend be a romantic partner is something I'll never have, but it's nice to experience it in fiction. There's a reason why childhood friends to lovers is such a popular trope and resonant with straight audiences, but it's particularly intense for LGBT plus people who, like Will, feel like they were robbed of their childhood and robbed of having a normal life. And I want to share this post that moved me, where someone asked online, how hard was it to come out as a gay in the 80s? And I think of Mike and Will when I read the story. He writes, one of the challenges was the denial of oneself being gay. There were no role models. There were no out and proud celebrities or sports figures. What we had was Paul Lynde, Liberace, Charles Nelson Riley, or movie villains who were usually psychopathic killers. Gay men were weird, flamboyant creatures who lived either in New York City or San Francisco. They didn't live in Ohio, that was for sure. In that environment, I made the regrettable but common mistake of believing I was not gay myself. I was nothing like Liberace or Charles Nelson Riley. I played sports. I had an engineering degree. I worked in construction. I also made the mistake of getting married too young. After all, I still responded to stimulation, even if it was from a woman, so clearly I was not gay. How naive and in denial was that? The marriage was not a happy one for either of us, and it didn't last long. It was only when I truly fell in love, and for the first time in my life, at age 32, as my marriage was falling apart, that my denial began to crumble. I preferred the company of my buddy over being with my wife, even though he and I never acted on it. We were both in love, and we both knew it, but neither of us said it for years. He eventually died of a brain tumor, but told me a few days before he passed that he had always been in love with me. And would be waiting for me to join him in the next life, where we would finally get it right, and it would be forever. It's incredibly common, and especially for young gay people in the 1980s, to not approach your friend. And this is not just about young gay boys and girls, but all children, particularly boys, being made afraid to express intimacy, affection, tenderness with friends of the same sex. And this is why Mike's likely journey is so believable. One would think that more LGBT plus creators would talk about Byler, but they don't, and it's understandable. I think many of us just learn to curb our hope, to lower our expectations. We don't want that all too familiar experience of disappointment, which happens over and over again, that queer baiting that happens in shows so frequently and so maddeningly. Conventional wisdom says that the flagship show for Netflix will not end a popular straight relationship, Mike and Elle, for business reasons, and that's happened before. But it would be incredibly meaningful for a mainstream hit show like Stranger Things to have a believable, properly developed LGBT childhood friends to lovers story. This is a show that sides with the bullied, the misfits, where the characters have formed a found family that enables them to overcome evil. A romantic relationship between Mike and Will would be the ultimate way to say that it's okay to not conform. It's okay to find love and meaningful relationships outside of traditional nuclear family units, and in fact, it's necessary to do that to defeat real-life evil. It would be a hugely successful mainstream hit show, making a gay couple a central relationship, not a niche show that already is LGBT themed, and not having this couple as a gay sideshow. It would be a victory for normalizing LGBT plus people. And for the many people who are like me, it would do a little to fill a hole that is real and make many people feel some hope again and encourage boys and girls of all ages, gay and straight and in between, to be more open and honest and caring for each other without fear of being accused of being gay. I think I'll just end with this scene from the show. It's Mike talking to a possessed Will, trying to coax him out. Mike knows that if he fails, he will lose Will forever. This is not your typical friendship, and unlike a certain other confession, this isn't frantic, and he's not urged to do it by somebody else, and it's quite vulnerable and painful. Nothing I have said over the course of this very long video conveys better the strength of Mike and Will's bond, or how meaningful it would be for me and many, many others if everything this show is showing us is confirmed. That, yes, this is love, this is beautiful, and this is real.
Do you remember the first day that we met? It was the first day of kindergarten. I knew nobody. I had no friends. And I just felt so alone and so scared. But I saw you on the swings, and you were alone too. You were just swinging by yourself. And I just walked up to you and I asked if you wanted to be my friend. And you said yes. You said yes. It was the best thing I've ever done.